Good evening, everyone. We will officially call this workshop to order at 4:30 p.m. This is a workshop for the City of Manvel, Manvel City Council. And on the agenda, we have the discussion on the fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget. And we're going to turn this over to Dan, Rosie, and the team. But before we do, thank you to everybody that's been involved in this process. I know there have been a few hurdles to overcome, so I appreciate your efforts. Also want to express my appreciation to my fellow council members. I know that we've put a lot of time and a lot of thought into it up to this point. Extra meetings, extra time, and that hasn't gone unnoticed. Just kind of a run through of what's going to occur tonight and then on the regular agenda. Dan and Rosie are going to go through the proposed budget, kind of break it apart for us, get into the different departments, highlight some of the things that are included, some of the things that aren't included. And so at any point in time, if we have questions or comments, let's make sure just to ask those at that point, since it's going to be a lot of information coming our way. In regards to discussing maybe any different allocations or things that we would like to see in the budget, let's hold off until the end to do that. Because at the end, one of the things that we are going to have to discuss as council is how do we want to fund this budget? Specifically with the tax rate that's been proposed, do we want to see taxes go up, stay the same, or go down? Because that ultimately determines how much money is available in the budget and which funds and sources we pull from. So we'll have that discussion, and one thing I do want to note is that Councilwoman Sarmiento is going to have to step out of the meeting at 5:20 p.m. Her daughter is entering Manvel Junior High School, and it is Meet the Teacher night tonight, so family comes first, and I honor you, Crystal, for doing that and making that time. And then in the regular agenda, we do have an item on the regular agenda that we will get to, which is going to be agenda item number 2. For this item is where we will set what's called the preliminary tax rate. This is a little bit deceiving because it's not us setting the tax rate, but it's essentially us setting the cap. What that means is whatever tax rate we choose there, we cannot go over that tax rate, but we certainly can go underneath that tax rate. So we have a very specific process to follow for that, and I believe that Tammy will be able to talk through that process for us. So with that, Dan, Rosie, team, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Hopefully you got some Olive Garden back there. If not, I'm sure we might possibly have some time in between the workshop and the regular meeting to sneak a bite. But so I gave you quite a bit of material over the last week, and I realize that, and thank you for not responding in a bad way, I guess. I know there's a lot to sort of digest there. The biggest thing, of course, like the mayor just said, is the budget itself. Brooke has it where we can pull it up. You also have a bound copy in front of you. You also should have the PDF that we sent out last Tuesday. So at the moment, it's only a 93-page document, and that includes, it's sort of a little difficult to say that because the last couple of sections are actually the information directly from the county, the appraisal district. So I can tell you that we actually ran into the city manager for Iowa Colony at lunch today, and they haven't got their values yet. So they're a little bit behind where they want to be. So we are fortunate. We actually got our appraised numbers, certified numbers on July 25th, which is in section 9 back there. As we knew, our overall taxable value has gone up significantly. I think Kyle had said, it took us the entire existence of the city to get to our first billion in property tax or property value, and in 2 years we've gone above 2 billion. So it's certainly an exponential growth. Who knows what next year will be like? It could be 2.5 or 3. We don't know. Obviously growth is still going, even though it has slowed down a little bit. This year it's certainly still going. So a little bit over $2 billion in net taxable value. Another important thing to know is that we'll just say 300 million of that is still in protest right now. So it will be at least 283 million. It could be as much as 315 million. So it's somewhere in that range that's in play right now with the appraisal district. So what does that mean? That gives us our basis for how the county actually calculates our new revenue and our de minimis, which is not applicable for us this year. But then it also gives us our voter approval rate, which means If you wanted to go up to, right now we're at 57 cents. If you wanted to go up to 65 cents, you can potentially, but you would have to go to the voters. And Tammy has a schedule for us if that's something that you want to consider. If we want to do anything at or below the voter approval rate, then there's a process for that. It requires a couple of public hearings, and we'll talk about that process. If you want to go the no new revenue, then it's the easiest process of all. We don't, Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't even have a public hearing, right? So that's certainly the easiest one. Because of all of the constraints that we'll talk about here over the next hour or so, we are not necessarily recommending that, but obviously that is up to council. So if you like, I can just kind of start at the very beginning with our cover letter, go straight to page 2, and you'll see a table that's kind of, pull that one up there. Alrighty. The table has kind of got a blue header across the top of it. So what that is it's just a table of the last 10 years of, it's not coming up, huh? Oh. The last 10 years worth of tax rates that have been adopted by the city of Manvel. And as you can see, we had, going back to 2015, that was the first year that we started doing just the 2 penny number. So the year before, in 2014, it was 0.58, I don't know, 6034, it had some expounded number to it. But for the last 10 years, we've been doing just an easy 2 pennies worth of tax rates, just a little bit easier for everybody to track. So you can see it was 58 cents for a couple years and 57 cents for a couple years. 2019, certainly the highest that we've had, 69 cents. 2020 was 64 cents, 2021 is 61, and then 57 cents over the last 2 years. Because our voter approval rate is 560708, we are recommending that you come down to an even 56. One thing that we can say out loud about that is that if you decided to go that route, that's the lowest that the city has seen in 10 years, at least 10 years, potentially ever, but for sure in the last 10 years. If you went that route, then I guess the difference between that, go down to the green table, the no new revenue rate, the levy that is associated with that is about $10 million. So if you went up to 56 cents, the difference is it's about 11.3 million. So the punchline there is if we don't go with the 56 cents, if we drop back down to the no new revenue, then it's a difference of about $1.3 million, roughly. So that's important to note. It's not working, huh? Brooke?
I'm getting it. I'm trying.
Hopefully you're all following along in the spiral. There we go.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I was stalling.
Next page.
Yeah, no, just go down a little bit more.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so just as an example, the sort of peach colored one there, for a $300,000 home with a proposed rate of 56 cents, that equates to about $192 a year or $16 a month. So that would be the increase above the no new revenue. No new revenue meaning it's roughly the same as it was last year for the city of Manvel portion. Now we can't speak for what a drainage district or a school district or any of those other taxing entities might do. We're only talking about the city of Manvel. So far, so good? Okay. So now if we want to jump in, we do have the mission statement in there, Harry. So you saw that. So the property tax statement, this is section 2, and this is a table that Rosie was able to put together to kind of help you see the 3 different options. There you go, that one right there, perfect. So 3 different options. One option is the no new rate, second option is voter approval rate, and the third is the proposed tax rate. So what you see is that those first 3 columns, that's the city portion based on the certified value, the TERS portion, and then the total. So as you can see, the TERS portion is almost $300 million in property value. It's quite a bit. That results in somewhere between 1.4 and 1.6 million dollars of actual levy. And we can't change the INS rate. It is what it is. So if we do any other, if we whatever our tax rate is, the only thing that's actually changing is the M&O or O&M, however you want to say it. So section 3, what I can tell you, throughout all the department head meetings, You heard lots of good reports, lots of good things that our staff has identified that would make our job better, help us to do our job easier, help the citizenry. But many of those come at a cost. What is in the budget right now are these first 42 items that's in section 3. So the numbers don't mean a priority or anything. I'm a numbers person, an engineer, I guess, and I just have to, that way we can refer to, hey, what about line item number 16 or whatever. So, well, actually, speaking of which, I'll mention line item number 19. So that's street reconstruction. That extra $100,000 allows us to do all of the projects that was identified for this year in the street maintenance program. Just adding that 100 to the 300, right, Rosie, that we already have in there? Yeah, so 300 plus the 100. So altogether, right now, those projects that are in the budget, that's a little over $635,000, which is a great start. However, when we go to section 4, these are all the things that are not in the budget that have been asked for. The first one, the glaring one, can you zoom in on that a little bit? You heard from every department, basically every department needs more personnel. PD asked for 4 new patrol officers, an animal control officer, a telecommunications officer, a detective. Public Works asked for 4 new maintenance techs, utilities, 2 utility techs, a building official, permit specialist, construction manager, a human resource generalist, a finance clerk. So altogether, there's 20 different people that were identified by staff. Right now, none of those are included in the budget right now. The salaries, roughly budget-wise salaries, a little over $1 million by the time you add in fringe benefits, such as health insurance and longevity pay and disability, all of those, workman's comp, all those things. It's about $1.5 million. Then there are another 14 items that are all good items. They're all things that we need. The street sweeper, for instance, an animal control officer's truck, new police trucks, Vector trailer jet, all of those things, that's about 1.1. Those items are not in the budget just yet. And then probably the 2 big ones, and I've got one of them listed at the bottom, there's dependent insurance coverage. That's been a hot topic for council. It is not included right now. We really need to hone in on that. And actually, I'll go off script for a minute. Talking to Chad earlier today, we are in open enrollment, if you're familiar with what that is. So there's a window each year that we have to tell our insurance provider what we're going to do, what we're going to sign up for. And that window closes at the end of this month, as in August 31st, right? So we're going to, if that is something that council wants to consider, we're going to have to pull that trigger before the budget is actually approved. There's no easy way to say that unless you want to wait an entire year. I didn't get the impression that was council's intent. So just wanted to keep that in our minds. And then the other one that is not included, of course, is the wastewater treatment plant. We're very close to getting the final number. We're at 90 or 95%, Robbie? So they're close. They're telling us it's around $40 million. So obviously we do have some fund balance. We do not have $40 million in fund balance. So that would have to be some type of a debt issuance. So those are the 2 big things not included so far.
And Dan, just a few points of clarification. So what we have here from a supplemental standpoint, these are new items that did not previously have an allocation within the budget. There are some line items in the budget that we are increasing, some line items within the budget that we are decreasing. But these are new additions. And so along with, Dan, what you had mentioned, the dependent coverage is a decision point that we're going to have to make. The other is, and I think you had mentioned this in an email, is that there's a possibility that what we could do is look at either finding the funds somewhere else within the budget or pull from our unused fund balance to cover these one-time expenses that would then open up reoccurring revenue to be used for possibly some of the staffing positions. Not all of them, but at least some of them. So that's another decision point that we're going to have to make through this process.
Well said, Mayor. Yeah, so we wouldn't want to use any fund balance we can't use it for recurring things. So you wouldn't want to use fund balance for staffing or probably even dependent coverage, anything like that that's going to be a recurring thing, because then you're basically, straddling future councils with something that you may or may not be able to afford. But yes, capital projects, supplemental items, yes, you can. Now, what I was a little surprised about, Rosie and I got to talking, and I actually reached out to Chris Thomas. He was our finance director before, and until last year, we actually hadn't done any fund balance transfers because, as the folks that were on council 20 years ago, there was no such thing as a fund balance, not to the good anyway. So we've got around 8 or 9 million or so in fund balance right now. I believe I sent y'all an email about the policy that council adopted 2015, I believe, that said you really want to target about 20%. Interestingly, it actually gave us a window. It said the council at the time said between 15 and 25%. So it actually said 25% max. So we're closer to about 50%, I guess you would say, Rosie, about 50%. So we're good. That's healthy. So I'm not by any means suggesting that we drain it down to the 25%. In fact, we want to visit with Joe Morrow, our one of our financial advisors, to see, we've got a AA credit bond rating. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. And quite frankly, it's a great thing to have this. We don't know, a hurricane could happen, this year, and then we may need it. So, but there is a balance. So, Section 5. The cost of living adjustments right now. So this is a tally. A couple of the council members asked me independently, what if we wanted to give 10%? What if we wanted to give 20%? I haven't polled the staff, but I am certain that no one would say no if you wanted to do either of those. Right now, though, what's in the budget is 3%, which the corresponding costs are right there. So that's the overall cost, if you add up all of the personnel in every department. One thought might be, and I believe I've talked to a couple of council members about this, you might consider, a cost of living adjustment at 3%, but maybe council approves the equivalent of 5% or some number with a 3% across the board for the cost of living, and then the rest of it where the department heads could use that as merit or performance-based type increases. And for those folks that are doing what they were hired to do and nothing more, nothing less, then maybe the cost of living is plenty. And then those superstars that, wow, I need 3 more people just like you, maybe there's an additional 3% or something like that. So that's just just a thought that that council could consider. The next one, Section 6, this starts getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think the mayor and I talked about this. This is really helpful. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it up there. Yeah, that's the one. I know. Rosie, do you mind if I hand off to you on this one to try and kind of explain this one a little better?
This is basically a recap of all our funds put together and the different kind of revenues and the expenses. And it gives you an overall under or over in expenditures. And then it gives us a beginning balance, a fund balance as of July 31st, which is the last one I had for this last financials. And then I put in any transfer ins to the different funds that might come in from other funds, giving you the ending fund balance. This number gives you basically what we would be spending and receiving and what you'd have available for fund balance if we wanted to transfer in to cover some of those missing expenses that we need. As you can see on the general fund, we worked our numbers and we have a small surplus of $280,000 that could cover one of the many things that we need. You saw the numbers when I presented them, 2 weeks ago? So since then, Dan and I and other members, we've been working back and forth, moving numbers how they need to be. Going back to the history, checking to see if there was anything that I could pull out and use for this thing. A vehicle replacement, I will not be doing a transfer in from the general fund this time. I'm going to be doing a transfer in from their fund balance. in order so that we can also have a budget this coming year, but so that the general fund could cover some of the other stuff that it needs to cover.
Hey, Rosie, a quick
yes, sir.
clarification on that. That 200 and,
80,000?
yeah, that's the transfer in. Is that a transfer in from the general fund balance or from the vehicle replacement fund
From the
balance?
vehicle replacement fund balance. That way, since we needed to save some kind of money from the general fund, I stopped all the transfers out unless they really needed to be made, like for the utility. The debt service, well, that basically serves itself by the property tax. That one I can't really mess with. We should come out equal with the expenses and the revenues coming out there with maybe a minor adjustment to the net fund balance. Wastewater treatment plant, department, as you can see, we did do a transfer in of 288,000. That is coming from the general fund, but we're trying to find other revenues that can help reduce that cost. On the impact fees, again, these are coming in from the impact fees that we charge, and they will be transferred out to the capital projects fund. On capital projects, most of these revenues will be coming in from the fund balances and any impact fees that we might charge. And it's all already committed to different projects. On the Parks Fund, we are doing a transfer from the general fund to be able to cover their expenses. Hotel motel tax that is paid by our actual hotels and motels in the city. So most of that really does go into their fund balance unless we can find specific use related to the law. But that, again, that's restricted money. We can only use it for specific, they're very specific on what we can use. The jury fund, the security fund, truancy fund, technology fund, and the law enforcement fund, the PEG, they're all restricted funds. And whatever revenues come in, they're also, we cannot touch them unless it's specifically for the item. SMDA, the same thing. We have some funds coming in from the actual TERS. And then they do their capital outlay projects from that. On the TERS, as you can see, we do have that budgeted in, but it goes out of there and into whatever debt service we might have to create for SMDA to cover the projects that have already been built. MEDC, they get part of our sales tax, and again, it's not something we can touch. MEDC decides where those funds go. We've worked very hard to be able to bring that deficit that we had on the general fund that we presented 2 weeks ago. I feel this is as conservative as I can go without pushing the bar and making it more where I can't meet those goals.
Mayor, if I could,
Questions on this hard to see worksheet? I did it on purpose, okay?
if I could add one thing, Rosie,
Yes,
on
sir.
capital projects, other sources, so the 158,400, that's the surface water, the BRA
Yes, sir.
reimbursement?
Yes, sir.
So-
And that is being conservative. That was based on their first couple of contracts. I know we've signed some more since, and I have not put in those numbers yet.
Yeah, and literally as late as last week, I think, Tammy, we were signing some of those, so that should be more, quite frankly. It should be very close to the 300 and 350,000.
Yeah, hopefully we have at least verbal commitments for 100% of the resale of our BRA water, which will be over 300,000 this
And
year.
what's great about that is, in years past, you'd have to pull from your general fund or your fund balance in order to cover that cost. We won't have to do that based off of the work by the team to secure these agreements. Dan and Rosie, does this also include the TERS clawback?
The TERS clawback is actually being transferred currently to the SMDA. I've asked for some clarification, and we're working on that to see if that belongs to the SMDA or it should be transferred to the general fund.
Okay, and so that would be the 150,000 that's listed there underneath the transfers in?
For this year, yes.
Okay.
For this past year.
And then one other question that I have, Rosie, and then we'll open it up to council to see if they have any about this, which I love this, to have one page, even though it's small, to have one page to be able to see everything and see the story, how the money's flowing, where it's flowing. I think this is phenomenal. The fund balance that we have, the ending fund balance for the general fund of the 9,159, 9.1 million, we'll say. Does that include what we're expected to put to the general fund in this current fiscal year's budget, or is
Yes,
that
sir.
excluding that? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
So the 9.1 million that you see there on the last line for the general fund is including what we would put to our quote-unquote savings account for the general fund for this year. So right now, projections have us for this current fiscal year's budget to have expenses that are less than our revenue, meaning that we'll be able to put some money to the quote-unquote bottom line, which will allow us to further beef up that fund balance.
And that fund balance right now will be moving up and down. So it doesn't necessarily mean that'll be the final number. It all depends on what we can collect these last couple of months and how much we spend. That'll change that number.
And that's where the 280,000 and the 288,000 transfer in comes from?
The 280,000, that one is actually coming in from the general fund, from the vehicle fund balance. Each fund has their own fund balance to work with.
Okay,
So
so
that-
the 1.444, we're gonna pull the 280 out of that.
The 280 is getting transferred out of the actual fund, vehicle fund, replacement fund.
Councilman, the answer, yes.
Yes.
Yes to that, yeah.
But-
And then,
but
Rosie,
the-
just one other question that I do have. The water and wastewater, so I know we're transferring in, it looks like $288,000 from the general fund for that. From the fund balance in order to cover that. It looks like here that the ending fund balance is 14.74 million. Is there a reason why we're not pulling from the fund balance within that fund?
Normally, that is only used when we're going to do large infrastructures. That's where we can pull it in, and that we need to have a healthy fund balance if you're going to go out for bonds using the utility fund.
But we could if we wanted to.
Yes, sir, we
Okay,
could.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm sorry, Dan, you had something that you were going to add?
I'm so sorry. Just back to what Councilman Lands was talking about, the 280 and then the 280,542. I think those are just coincidental. Those two numbers aren't related, if that's what you're asking. So
Well, it's the 280 and then the water wastewater, the 288.
right, they just happen to be similar numbers. Yeah.
So the 288 is gonna come from this 9.159?
It can. Yes, from the 9.159, yes. So the 288 and the 388 are related. Right, Rosie? The 288 transfer into the water and wastewater is part of the transfer out from the general fund, that's 388?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
Right.
Oh, I got you.
And the
Okay.
other $100,000
It's
is going to the parks.
fund,
Yep,
yes.
yep.
I got you. 288 is part of 388.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now,
I know there's a lot of 280s, but they're not related. That's
confuse-
that was the point I was trying to make.
to confuse you guys some more, so
Right.
this 208 transfer into the parks. My impression, Rosie, was that we allocated that from this current fiscal year's budget already for the improvements for the garden at Croy Park. Would we not need to recognize that within the current year's budget, or are we?
That one was already recognized, but if I remember correctly, that is a two-part project. So we recognized the expense for the first project, and I'm making contingency there for the second half of the project.
So where is the other 100,000 going that's being transferred out?
From the general fund,
Yes,
it is going to the parks.
to the parks. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Rosie, looking at the parks here, if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at the year-to-date activity, I see expenses out of $55,000 for contractual services, $99 for capital outlays. Shows me as a fund balance of the 252. I don't yet see an expense recognized for phase one, but then it looks like that we're pulling from that 252 to be a part of the transfer in to help us. So, I mean, it might just be me, and I apologize, but it doesn't look like necessarily the numbers are lining up there.
Not quite yet. The invoices haven't come in so that we can recognize the expense in there.
Okay.
Where do you see 252?
So that would be, if you look underneath the 2022-2023 year-to-date activity through July, you look down at the very last line, total fund 55 Parks Fund, 252-101.71.
He's gone into the detail now.
Oh yeah, I've gone into the detail, my apologies. This
I don't
is,
see those numbers.
my apologies, this is page 7 of 18.
Oh,
Because my main thing was just making sure that this transfer in, that we actually had that within the fund balance for parks. And it's also up on the screen as well, I believe. Is it?
And while she's looking at, if I could, Mayor, so there, section 8 and section 9, no, excuse me, section 7 and section 8, those are year-to-date numbers. The first one is sort of it's called a group summary, so it's a little bit more palatable. If you don't want to dig into all of the account numbers, you can kind of see things at a glance. It's kind of zoomed out, if you will.
where?
Section 7, it's called the Budget Comparison Report Group Summary.
Crystal, it's going to be page technically 1 of 18.
Oh, I was there.
Yeah.
Sorry. skipping
No, that's
around
okay.
this thing.
So,
Trying to
I know.
keep up with you guys.
So that's the one that's first, and then the next one is in section 8, and that's the account summary. So it's the same information, it's just more detailed. The way that Rosie and I were actually looking at it was we'd kind of combined these two, but I was worried that y'all would get the pages, you'd go from page 1 of 18 to page 1 of 57, page 2 of 18 to page 2 of 50. It was, we got it, but I was worried about how that would come across in your printed document, so. Anyway, we there, Brooke? Okay. Nope.
Are we going? Okay.
Yeah, I think the mayor wanted to go to page 7 of 18 for the Parks Fund.
7 of 18, section 7.
There you go. Perfect. Yes, exactly. Yes, ma'am.
I think I'm good to go. I think Rosie answered my question. So, yeah, the answer there was that we haven't recognized the invoices yet. Once we recognize the invoices, this will be able to be cleaned up to where we'll see that there's actually enough money within the fund balance to transfer over to recognize for this upcoming fiscal year's budget in order to, if we wanted to allocate those funds to the Parks Department, which that's a question that we'll have to answer, is whether or not it's appropriate to allocate those funds. But if we do, that's how it's going to flow.
Yes, sir.
I got you.
Okay, so in section 8, what I could say about that, if you want to just go ahead and turn to maybe say I guess page 1 of 37 is what it's titled at the bottom, just to kind of get an idea of all of the different account numbers. We have, I couldn't even guess, Rosie, how many account numbers we have. Many is really the punchline there. We have lots of different ones, and everything from office expenses to training and travel to fuel to salaries, of course, health benefits. There's a different account number for pretty much everything in every department. If you were to go through, and I have, and I'm sure probably the mayor has, maybe a couple of y'all have, if you go through one by one line item and just kind of look at the trends, what you'll see, that far column is kind of the easiest way to kind of zoom in to see what you want to see and look at the percentage. We've just got, 2 months left in this fiscal year. So if you see something getting a little really low as far as how much is left, or excuse me, if you see something very high is what I should say, like a huge change, that might kind of draw your attention. Or very, very low, like what happened here? Why is this a minus compared to last year? For instance, I just see one, which let me get to a good one. Plat fees, for instance. So this is on page 2 of 37, just as an example. 1004, 4207 plat fees. So 2 years ago, they were $150,000. A year ago, they were $110,000. So far this year, even though we budgeted for 120,000, we've only seen about 93,000. So we're estimating that we'll be right around the $100,000 mark for next year, which is $20,000 less than what we had budgeted last year. Now, we don't know. Development could take off again, and it could be right where it's at. What I'm trying to say is that you could drive yourself crazy trying to go account by account by account. And what I would like to do is if you see something that obviously stands out, let's talk about it. Of course, we can talk about it tonight or over the next couple of weeks. Email me about it. But by and large, we've tried to do at a staff level is look at the trend. Just because money hasn't been spent yet this year, I'm cautious of, hey, well then let's just take that off. Let's not budget for it next year because it might not have been spent yet this year. There could be a reason why. Because what I don't want us to do, and some cities wind up in this predicament, I don't want the department heads to ever get in the position where they feel like they have to use it or lose it. And that mentality, it'll creep up on all of us. And so they're challenged to be good stewards of the budget, just like we all are. So we'll just put our trust, I guess, put our faith in the process. And I'm not saying, hey, this one's too much. We're never spending that much. If you see a trend and we keep budgeting $100,000 for something and we're only spending $2,000, well, maybe we're overestimating, of course. But does that kind of make sense? And I don't know if any of y'all want to get into the weeds, but if you do, I just wanted to sort of paint that picture before we get into it. I know Mayor and I have talked about, and I went through and marked up a bunch of them, sent them to Rosie. You've marked up a few too. So I don't know if we want to get into any of those weeds tonight. Again, the main purpose of tonight is to talk about the tax rate.
What I'll open it up to council now is based off of what's been discussed. Are there any questions that we have about what's been proposed? Any specific allocations, increases, decreases that have caught your eyes?
I just have one question. Looking at this plan reviews, $600,000? Oh,
Where are you? So I can follow along.
this is page 2 of 37,
In section,
Section 7 or 8.
8.
section 8. Thank you.
What do we charge for plan reviews?
It's a percentage of, and Joe's might be able to answer that, but it's a percentage of the actual construction of the home or the business or whatever. It's based on, so the more expensive, I know, but the more inspections they have to do, the more people actually have to review the plan. So I don't have the formula handy, and I think it's actually changing. So we've reduced that significantly from, last year's budget was $900,000, and so we're reducing that to $600,000, which
That's a hefty number.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, there's a new bill that goes into effect on September 1st of this year that dictates that you can no longer set fees for reviews or anything of the such associated with the value of the project that's being done. You have to quantify it based off of a different algorithm. And so it seems like you guys are preparing to see the fees reduced based off of that state law.
Interesting.
Yes, sir. And like Rosie said, hopefully, prayerfully, it's conservative, but we would rather be conservative now, of course, than heading towards the end of the year and having to do requesting a bunch of transfers.
I have two questions for the chief. Chief Trailer, put you on the spot here. And also, Chief, I know you're not one necessarily for public accolades, but I had somebody that reached out to me that said that there was a citizen that was expressing some frustrations based off of an interaction that happened in the city, and that you personally reached out and made a phone call there, that you went above and beyond and to make sure that there was a communication and a two-way communication. And so I appreciate you doing that. Two items that drew my attention in the police budget specifically. One is that we are increasing the minor tools and equipment line item for your department there. Would love to get some insight into that. And then also that the overtime allocation is increasing as well, and would love to get some insight into that.
If I could step in the line of fire for a sec, if you go back to section 3, where we've got all of the supplementals that are included, a good chunk of those come from, and that's why we listed out, which department those came from. So Chief, you might not have even known the answer to that, but those are the ones that we were able to work in.
I kind of put two and two together and figured something out that the minor tools and equipment is a lot of the equipment that we asked for, or that I asked for in my initial presentation. I don't know exactly, we hadn't got to the point of having that discussion as to what is actually put in there yet, but that's why that increase is there. Usually what has happened in the past with the minor tools and equipment is that's where the equipment for our new patrol vehicles have been placed, such as the emergency equipment and so on and so forth. Well, Rosie and I have had discussion over that, and we're kind of looking at changing that to where it goes into the overall cost of the vehicle and the vehicle replacement fund, not the minor tools and equipment. But a lot of this cost is just basically the equipment that we've asked for the upcoming year. As far as the overtime costs are, because our department has increased in size. I mean, we added like 11 people a year ago, and that's including the patrol officers. So the overtime costs are going up a little higher. Usually the communications division eats up the overtime, but we've been able to, curtail that a little bit because we've got our communications division staffed up. I still need to get one more in there, but that's going to be decided through the budget process, and that'll give us 2 dispatchers per shift. So if one calls in sick, you still have one covering. But the overtime costs are based off of the
What I did on the overtime is I basically scheduled 1 hour of overtime per employee for the whole year. If we use it, if we don't, even better. What I did is because if you ask an employee to be here at 8 o'clock in the morning, for example, you expect them to be here at least 5 or 6 minutes before. So if you add 5, 6 minutes in the morning, 5, 6 minutes in the afternoon, it adds up. So we have departments putting in overtime when they weren't even budgeted for overtime. So I just did a simple formula like that, hoping that each department is able to stay at or below that number. And of course, more employees, more it shows up.
And one thing to remember is, in our line of work, you never know when you're going to have to stay over. So it's always best to have that extra cushion, I guess you would say, in the event we have a major incident where I've got the whole 4 or 5 people over for 5 and 6 hours at a time. It could even be longer than that. So it's really good to have that little extra cushion in there for our overtime costs. So we're not, at the end of the year, we're looking at, like we were in the past, at $20,000-$25,000 over because of unexpected illnesses or major events that have happened.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you, Rosie. Thank you, Chief. I also noticed that we were able to set aside in this budget the $2,500 for Development Services Department for vehicle maintenance. So I'm glad that we were able to capture that. So I appreciate the effort that was put in there. Anybody on council, any questions about what's been? Yes, sir.
This, the tools and equipment, does that include the drone that we were wanting?
I gave you a budget, you decide how you want to spend it. You pick what you need the most.
To be determined.
There you go.
If I,
It's on the grab bag, huh?
It's one of those things that if the budget's approved, we have the money, that we'll prioritize the equipment that we need and the stuff that we're really faced with having to get. So if it's some of my officers' preference, yes. But we will look at the overall amount that was placed in there, and then we'll prioritize what we need.
Okay.
if I could, Mayor, the total was around $325,000 if you added up all the miscellaneous. And I think right now we have 75,000 in the budget itself. Then if you add on the other 250 or so that's in the supplemental. So if you go the route like you discussed earlier, and we include all of the supplemental requests in a transfer, then yes. Right now, possibly.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
And Councilwoman Sarmiento, I know that you're going to have to head out soon, so do you have any questions or comments?
I have quite a few. Trying to keep up with where we are in this massive book. It looks like a number Bible.
Well, we'll just say the city of Pearland, they get 2 300-page binders to go
Well,
through.
thank you,
So
Rosie, for making this easy. I definitely have a few questions. There's statement, sorry. Okay, road trip brain. Okay, so being the fact that we have right now we have 8 million, right, in the reserve fund. And I believe you stated, Dan, that based on the policy that we have, it's recommended to have 25, but we're looking to have a recommended of 50% in there, right, in the future?
We
In our
have
fund
about,
balance?
right, we have about 50% right now.
Okay, we have.
Yes, ma'am. The policy that a previous council adopted said the goal, the target was 20% with a range of 15 to 25. So we're well within that. We're actually above the target.
Okay, so I really love safety, feeling safe and secure and being able to plan for the future for those Harveys. However, I also realize that it is a very healthy balance, and we're kind of in that state of we have a lot of asks from every department, and it's really hard to tell everyone no across the board, which, you know, this beautiful presentation and budget looks like we're accounting for those things in there. The only thing that I would like to say is that I agree with the statements of maybe using it for initial or equipment purchases and not for those recurring revenues. I do think that we'll see an influx in the money, hopefully, with, like everybody said, with the taxes actually coming in with the $2 billion that have been assessed, et cetera. We can't really, hold that or pin that down, but I really would like to see us come up with, a solid number to make sure that the police have, right, their one-time necessities. For me, that's the biggest thing, because I'm hearing time and time again from our citizens, we're the city on the rise, and it's almost embarrassing to drive through the city on the rises police station and not, I know we have the things there, and some people don't agree with this, and I'm sorry, we're not always going to agree on everything, but as my fellow councilman David Land said very beautifully and eloquently online the other day, is we will do the best that we can for the city. So I just really wanted to put that statement out there, because that's where I stand, and I will be leaving here shortly. So if anybody has any comments about that, I think that would be great. I would really like to see the police department get their utilities.
And Crystal, to put you on the spot a little bit here, to be the first one to speak to this, what we're going to need to be shifting the conversation to, and Dan, one thing that I'll ask for you and Rosie to do is just to cover this debt schedule that you provided us as well. But Councilwoman Sarmiento, where are you at regarding the tax rate? From that perspective, are you happy with where we're at? Do you want to see it come down? What are your initial thoughts?
So here's the thing. Campaigns, people like to politicize taxes and et cetera because they want to get voted in. I didn't do that. So I know that there's some things out there on social media saying this council stated they would not raise taxes. I did not say that once. I like to look at things and do what's right in the moment. Do I want my taxes to go up? Absolutely not. Because if you look at what Brazoria County is doing to us, every citizen in the entire county is furious right now. However, and I want to be very, very clear here, is that when you break it down just like you broke it down earlier and you say at this rate, it's $192 a year. Some of our residents spend that out to dinner once a year. And I hate to use that analogy for some people, maybe not, maybe yes. But when we look at it like that and we peel it back and look at that number, I don't know that that's a deal breaker for me. Going to $192, $16 a month to make sure that our city is equipped, that it's the city on the rise, that we're keeping up with the times, and that we're not, shoestringing the growth of the city ineffectively or inefficiently. That's where I'm having a hard time getting past, because when I weigh $192 a year, right, versus, oh, let's just say no to our employees, let's say no to the growth, let's say no, because we don't want to see social media say our taxes went up 1 penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. I'm sorry, that's not what everybody wants to hear, but it's, when we put it into that perspective, I don't want my taxes to go up, but I don't want to tell the city no. I mean, I think that we've been stringing it along extremely frugally for the last 7, 8 years, and that is why we're in a big pickle that we're in now. So with that being said, I mean, honestly, nobody wants to see their tax rate go up, and people will be furious over that 1 penny or 2 pennies, but I can guarantee you other surrounding cities are paying way more than that. And I just, $192 for me is not a deal breaker, especially when I'm writing $6,000, $7,000 checks to other entities. So that's where I stand.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Dan, before we shift back to council to speak on the tax rate, can you cover this debt schedule that you provided for us?
Sure. The colorful one. Want to pull that one up, Brooke? Yeah, you just thought the other one was tough to read. Yeah, this is something that Rosie put together, I think, when she first started to try and get a grasp of what is going on. So this 2023 series of certificate of obligation bonds that council did earlier this year. Was that this year? Yes, earlier this year. Or actually late last year. I'm so sorry. But anyway, this was the 7th bond issuance that is sort of at work right now. It's not coming up? Oh, yeah, good. There you go. You want to just kind of maybe zoom way in, just to, nope.
How in? Tell me when to stop.
You-
Oh, no.
It was emailed to us a little bit earlier
Yep.
today.
And you see, that's why Rosie and I both wear glasses.
This is my first year wearing them.
Yep. Yeah, we're not doing anything to help that.
I'm sorry, which email is it in?
I think it was called bond summary.
Bond summary?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, I see it now.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Sure. Yeah.
better.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Rosie, I'll butcher it if I try and explain. I could explain it in engineering speak, but you want to take a stab at it?
Basically, this schedule is our payout schedule for each bond that we have. When it's, how much is due that fiscal year and how much interest is due in each fiscal year. What I've done is then I combined it at the ends to show you what we would be paying annually for principal and interest. As you can see, 2023 series goes out as far as 2052, yet we have the 2015 series that will finish paying in 2026. Next year's total principal and interest that we'll be paying is $1,830,000 for principal, $1,999,747 with 78 cents, dollars, for the interest, a total of $3.8 million just in bonds. This is just a quick schedule I had thrown in to give me an idea of what we owed and where. When I just started, I was trying to get a handle of everything. I was thrown into the deep end. And of course, when projecting, I did the 5-year. That's why it's so colorful. Every 5 years changes color. The things that are in yellow, we will be paying out right now. Actually, Brenda's setting up the payment for tomorrow because it's due on the August the 15th.
And
A lot
then,
of information and another little schedule.
and then, Brooke, could you scoot over just a little bit to the left, back over? Yeah. So, Rosie, am I reading that right? So the first bond that gets paid off is the 2015 bond
Yes, sir.
in 2026?
And then we go down to the 2013 bond. Then the 16, And then 17 and 18 get paid out at the same year, and then 2019.
So obviously, this doesn't anticipate a 2024 series or whatever. If council wanted to talk about another bond issuance for the wastewater treatment plant or anything, that none of that's included. This is only the stuff that we actually have borrowed money on. Okay. And I guess at the far right, Brooke, if you could scroll over there, so again, the punchline is what, 84 million or so? 82, yeah. And a significant chunk of that, of course, is interest, right? Does that help, Little Mayor? Okay.
Rosie, just to take a step back on you for a minute here, for the TERS clawback, my understanding is that we did not recognize that necessarily last year into the SMDA. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have the capability to capture last year's?
Yes, we do.
We do. Okay, do we know what that dollar amount's going to be?
I can, give me a second here.
Yes, ma'am, I appreciate that. I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I want to say it was 176,000, if I remember correctly, on the worksheet that we had created.
Okay.
But how accurate that number is, I need to double check.
Yeah, and I believe that we're working on kind of diving into that piece a little bit more, putting together almost like a
Exactly.
TERS clawback schedule, similar to what we have for a bond schedule almost.
Yes.
Okay, great. Got that out. All right, thank you. So I'll open it up to Dan. Well, first, anything else from you or the team?
I think I've saturated the scene, so yeah, we'll look for comments and questions, sure.
Absolutely.
I'm going to put my head in the noose. Someone has to. So if we maintained our 57-cent tax rate, how much extra revenue would we have over this 56?
Do you have those numbers, Rosie? I don't know if we tried to go up because, and we can go 57, we can go 58, we can go wherever you want to go, but anything over the voter approval of 560708 is going to require a voter
That's the voter
approval.
approval, okay.
As in, we put it out. Tammy, what's the process for that?
We would have to call a special election and it would go on.
Yeah, I thought the 57 from last year was still available for this.
It's not because of all of the new growth and the new property taxes and everything, right?
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
One more thing, my head's still in the noose. I would be curious to see, I know from our meet and greets and whatnot that our police officers are well underpaid. That's been said many, many times. And so that's always been one of my important points is to try to get their officer pay up as much as we can, as fast as we can, to maintain and hold on to our officers. I'm curious, how does the officer pay and the percentage they're behind, how does that compare to our city employees' pay? Our city employees' pay, are they 20, 30% behind also?
There was a salary survey done that the cities did last year, and the idea was that, we figure out where everyone needs to be. I wasn't part of that process, so I don't know. All I know is that City Council last year gave us 7% across the board, which was obviously very welcomed. It made some folks that were maybe below in their field or in their range, maybe brought them up closer. Some that were already towards the middle or even higher, it just made them even higher. So it was truly a cost of living adjustment. So it wasn't a market type situation. So I know the police department has done that. I don't know that we've done that on the civilian side, to be honest with you. Gone through person by person by person to see where they're. Personally, I'm doing that with the department, with my direct reports, and I'd love to challenge all of the directors to do that, the same thing for the folks, that all of your direct reports. If everybody's doing their part, then it's a little more manageable, right? But it's also a little, it can be sobering unless, if that's something that council wants to consider, this person might be 10%. This person,
Well, I know it'd be a tough pill to swallow.
Yes,
but
sir.
If, we're looking at a 3% rate across the board, but if we could do better than that for the police officers, I don't even know if that's a legal issue or not, but, giving the police department more, and it's not because, it's just to try to get them caught up, and
Sure.
our turnover rate is horrible.
It is. Now, I am familiar, Chief, you can probably fill in the gaps here, but so last year was, again, 7% across the board. The 2 years prior to that, was it 5% that the police department got?
It actually goes back to probably about 4 years that we did a impromptu salary survey amongst competing cities that we were losing officers to. And we were well below the standard or in comparison to these other cities. And what we did was, over the next 3 years, we increased the salaries 5% each year for the next 3 years. So they received a 15% pay increase over 3 years. And then last year, it was a 7% pay increase. But what happens is every time we increase the pay, so does everybody else. And so we're still playing that catch-up game, or that game of, as we move, everybody else moves. Example is last year, City of Alvin gave their police department a $5 an hour pay increase across the board, except for some supervisions who were already at the close to the top tier based off their salary survey. And the reason why they did that, when I talked to Chief Lee over there about it, the reason why they did that is because they were losing people to Friendswood, League City, Webster, such as that. And then that's in fact what we're doing right now, is having to compete with those other cities because they're suffering for a lack of the personnel as well. Everybody's fighting for everybody. I said it a couple of years ago, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and everybody's doing these increases, the sign-on bonuses, salary increases, and that's just to compete with each other. And unfortunately, we're competing against these larger cities, these cities who have that revenue, who have that fund stream, and it's turning into a revolving door for us to where we train people for another department. And that's not what we want to do. We want to try to hire and retain the officers that we have, because we want to keep them as long as we have, because it costs money to train and to bring people on. It's just one of those things that we have to be competitive. And as like when I brought up my presentation, some of the different benefits that are offered with other cities that we don't offer, and that's a lot of things they look for too, is those extra benefits and such. So yeah, it's a competitive world out there right now. The law enforcement world is not like what it used to be. When you go to these academies, there's 10, 15 individuals in a different academy when it used to be 35 and 40. Nobody wants to do this job anymore because of what's going on in the world nowadays. So it's a competitive business. And somehow, some way, we have to start thinking ahead and getting ahead of the ball game and trying to figure out how we can retain these officers, and I can hire the best and the qualified that we can get.
Well, I think, Dan, based off of the comments from Councilman Lanes, it might be worthy exercise and to go through that. And we might not have time to accomplish that within this year's budget. But moving into next year's budget, to be able to, instead of just giving flat across the board increases, be able to target. And I know that the police department has the development pay program. Working on something like that across the board also allows our city employees to see the career trajectory that they have. I think just giving them the promise of you're a part of a city on the rise is not enough. I think we need to give them something more substantive. What I'll say is, in regards to this budget, while the COLA increase might not be as much as all of us want. Maybe we go up to 4% or 5% to give that cushion, some discretionary for each department, which I'd be open to considering that. We're also looking at offering dependent coverage for the police department. We're increasing some of their supplies for the police department as well. We just worked on a take-home vehicle policy. So we're starting to build out some more competitive packages, and we're not going to be able to give everything we want at once, but we got to figure out within reason, living within our means, what are steps that we can take in the right direction. Now, what I'll say on my end regarding the tax rate, which that's the main conversation that we have tonight, I have no appetite to see taxes raised on our residents. That's just me. That would mean that we would have to adopt a tax rate between 51 to 52 cents. The federal government just got re-rated by Moody from being AAA plus to AA plus. Last time that happened was in 2011, and we saw an economic crisis that followed. Residents in our city have continued to see their taxes go up, and I think right now it's a very tough pill to swallow. We're going to be going through the survey results a little bit later in this meeting, and one of the things that stood out to me is that 78% of the respondents said that they do not want to see their taxes increased. And I understand that we have needs as a city, but we have a lot of growth that if we properly manage and leverage that growth, we can fulfill some of our needs strategically. I think as we begin to look at things further as a city, there's opportunities within the budget to be able to reallocate some funds to open up money to do the things that we want to do. For example, I would like to see that instead of pulling from the general fund for the water and wastewater department, we pull from that fund balance. I don't believe that our citizens who are not on the system should be seeing their tax dollars be used to cover the deficit for the system. I think there's other areas. We have $100,000 that's being designated towards the rainy day fund that we could zero that out. Recognizing the TERS callback for this year instead of going to SMDA, going to the city, and also last year's as well, opens up additional money. But as I talk with residents, as I talk with the community, as I talk with our business owners, them being asked again, which we saw it from the schedule since give me 1 second here. Looking at this, since 2018, our residents have seen their taxes go up to the city of Manvel. And while I respect the tax rate that's been proposed, and I respect the challenges that our city employees and our team has here, you know, if we're going to raise taxes on residents as a city, send it to the voters. Go to the voter approval rate and let the voters have a say. The only reason we wouldn't do that is because we know what their answer will be. That's my opinion. One of 7, but I feel like at this point we have the money within the unused fund balance. We have ways that we can reallocate it in order to not only bring the tax rate down to the 51, 52 cent mark, but at the same point in time, utilize our unused fund balance in order to fund a lot of one-time expenditures, which would then open up additional funds in the budget to fund the reoccurring expenditures. It's not just a campaign promise, which I respect Councilwoman Sarmiento's comments, but it's something that I believe in. As a family that lives on a very, very tight budget, where we do not have any money to put aside into savings for our future. We do not contribute to 401k. We do not contribute to our children's education account. Asking us even to pay $198 more a year is not something that we can stomach. And when I think of the retired school teacher on the corner, Kelly Clausen, when I think of other people in our city that are scraping by, I think we need to, at least for 1 year, find some relief for them. But certainly this is open to conversation, and but we will have a preliminary decision to make tonight. Any other comments from council in regards to this? Yes, please.
Okay. I'm obviously about to go down the path of unpopularity when it comes to the tax rate. First off, we know even at the state legislator, at that level, we know what the climate is and what's the culture right now as far as property taxes. My concern is that as a city, regardless of what people may think of our branding as a city on the rise, even though we may have slowed down, we're still adding rooftops, so that means citizens are still coming into the community. That also means that there are needs that we have to meet to service those citizens. And while raising taxes is not popular, and of course, if I had the ability to not do so, that would be my choice. However, I don't want to run the risk of us putting the city in a position to where we're not able to properly meet our financial obligations, and we're having to take risky acts, such as the fund balance, which could impact us in the future. We know that there are projects that are going to require us to go out for debt, and we need a credit rating that is going to save us money as far as the interest rate. And so I'm saying all that to say, I don't want us to make a decision today that is going to box us in and put us in a position to where we can't get out of it in the future when it comes to the tax rate. I also feel, and maybe this is just my opinion, that we may need to do a better job of informing the citizenry when it comes to their property taxes. They need to understand much of that rate or the amount that they're paying is not merely coming from the city of Manvel, and many don't fully understand that. They see that absorbent rate and don't realize that they're paying to the county and to Alvin ISD and to mud tax and et cetera. I feel, and obviously I could be proven wrong in a vote, but that if the citizens understand that $192 or that $200 more per year is going to ensure that the departments get the additional staff they need, the additional equipment they need, road repairs, whatever is needed to maintain the city properly, I'm hoping, this is all what we call it, a social experiment and part of our social contract. I'm hoping that they will understand that. And so I'm just putting that out there so that if it requires me to vote in favor of a tax increase, that there's somewhat of an understanding as to why I would consider that.
I agree with Mr. Perry. The Manvel has put things off for a long, long time. We've been waiting for the better days to come for the last 20 years that I know of. I'm sorry, folks, we're here. Better days are here. Granted, the cost of living has skyrocketed and all that. In the scope of what Mr. Perry just said, if at the proposed rate, we have to have public meetings, right? Is that at the 56 cents rate?
Public hearing, yes.
Public hearing. That is where the message is, where we get that feedback, right? Where that message to deliver. This is what you're getting for that cost. Life, every year things go up, right? Everybody doesn't want nothing to go up, but I don't know anybody that wouldn't like a pay raise in life, right? And as far as Manvel, I think we deserve some of the things that are on the table here. We deserve, the citizens deserve this, right? We all live here. This is our community. And we've just put off things for so long. There's a need, and I think the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you to both of the gentlemen here. One thing, I want to make sure that we don't dismiss the reality of the survey that was just completed by over 700 residents in Manvel, which many of them said that they wanted to see different things. They wanted to see infrastructure. They wanted to see roads. They wanted to see parks. But yet, if you look at the correlation between the people that said that they wanted to see certain things, at the same time, they said that they didn't want to see their taxes go up. And I know we're going to get into the survey conversation later, because I think that provides throughout the survey some very valuable insights for us that we can take not just into this budget, but the future budget. One thing that I would ask my two fellow councilmen who just spoke to consider then is look at adopting the voter approval rate to send it to the voters for approval. If we feel as a body, a majority, that this is something that is desperately needed, then let's take it to the voters and live with their voice. One question that I do have, and Dan and Rosie, my apologies, I've not talked to you in depth about this. What about increasing the Manvel homestead exemption? Right now, if you're under 65, I believe it's either 0% or 1%. What if we looked to increase that in adopting this budget, such as what the city of Alvin just did? I'm not saying increase it to 20%. I think you'd have to look at the math. You'd have to see what would an increase in the homestead exemption do. But has there been any consideration or any exploration in the past as to what that would entail? And I know I'm putting you on the spot. If you need time to think about it.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, of course, that would send us in the opposite direction. I mean, as far as revenue goes, right? I mean, that would be less money coming into the city, of course, right?
Well, what it would ultimately do is it would put a little bit more of the burden, and this is in full transparency, a little bit more of the burden on businesses from a property tax standpoint. So you wouldn't necessarily feel the burden as somebody that has a homestead, but those that are renting, those that operate a business, that's where you would see the burden. So you technically wouldn't realize the full gain of the proposed rate, but you would see an incremental gain because these other places are carrying it. Because the benefit of a homestead is these businesses can produce more revenue. They have the ability to go out there to sell more product, to provide a higher quality of service, produce more revenue to offset what they might be paying more in taxes. I don't have that ability. I haven't seen a salary increase for my job in 3 years, but yet my taxes have gone up, my grocery bill has gone up, my gas has gone up. So would council be open to at least looking at those numbers to see what that would entail? Yes, please.
Okay. Before I address answering that question, I wanted to go back to the point of sending the tax rate to the voters. And I don't know if I mean this to be a rhetorical question or if I actually expect an answer from a professional who can give me the answer. But there's something to be said for a properly informed electorate. So if we're speaking of sending it to the voters, are we going to ensure that they understand what the results will be for whatever decision they make? What I'm saying is, say they reject the increase, then we as the council, as well as the city staff, are then left with the responsibility of still having the city function as it should without potentially the proper revenue to do it. So that's a concern for me. So I guess it was a rhetorical question.
Tammy, could you clarify? So on the voter approval rating, it's only if we go above that, right?
Correct.
So, in other words, if we wanted to go to, say, at 57 cents, for instance, like what Harry was mentioned earlier, or David was mentioned earlier, if we wanted to go to 57 cents, or even 56, I lost the number, sorry.
0709, as an example.
Yeah, you just wanted to go up above that, that's whenever.
So, no, if you go to the 560708, that is the voter approval rate. That's the rate that will, anything from that and up would go to the voters. Keep in mind, should we do that, just for the runoff election was almost $20,000 city's cost. So we will have to budget the cost of that special election because it's not going to fall with your May election. It's going to be a scheduled special election.
Well, that's something to consider. We will have an agenda item where we can discuss that piece a little bit further. One thing that I want to do, we'll take the next 6 minutes to talk about this. I think it's an important item that I didn't want to get lost with, Dan, what you had mentioned in regards to dependent coverage. What Dan had mentioned, Dan, can you just review what that predicament was that we found ourselves in?
Oh, yes, yes. So we are currently in the open enrollment right now with our health plan. So we have until the end of the month to tell our provider, each one of us has to 90 some odd employees has to tell them, this is the insurance, this is the health insurance, the dental, the vision, the whatever, and here are my dependents. Unless something changes throughout the year as far as a marriage or a divorce or a child is born or whatever, that's the only way that kind of opens the portal back up, so to speak. Otherwise, it closes at the end of this month. So I don't know that we have the luxury of waiting. If you really want to provide dependent care coverage to the employees this year, we're going to have to make that decision probably at the next council meeting, quite frankly.
And I think what we would have to do, Dan, is in order to do that, we would need to do a current year budget amendment to technically make the funds available in this year's budget to show our commitment to it. And then employees could enroll, because that would have to be realized within the current fiscal year within September. And then we would really know at that point how many employees want to take advantage of this step-dependent coverage. And then that could allow us to fine-tune the numbers for the proposed budget. Does that sound?
Make sense?
Would that be correct, or was I out of left field? Sounded good to me. I think we go with it.
Because we have to.
So everything that we're going to do now, the portal will close on August the 31st, but the insurance will not go into effect until October 1. So we wouldn't be charging, or any of those funds would be allocated until after that October 1 date.
So what we would instead, based off of that information, what staff is looking for is for us to make a determination, yes or no, regarding whether or not we at least want to allocate $300,000 for dependent coverage. You need a firm decision.
Right, and of course, the premiums wouldn't be due. It's not like we would be writing, them a check or anything like that. They wouldn't be due, but to your point about the budget transfer, at least it would say out loud, this is what we want to do, right? I think that was your point, right? The monies themselves wouldn't be due, it'd be due like normal, out of each paycheck or whatever, but commitment, there you go, that's a good way to put it, Joseph.
Council, what are your thoughts?
I think this is an important consideration that, we need to look closely at this so that we can move forward. Again, it goes back to we need qualified city staff that can perform their jobs at the highest level of excellence, whatever that is, and the emotional and mental well-being. And it's wonderful to have the prime and urgent care available, but we know the reality is that medical costs and care are going to exceed that, and not having coverage for your family does not put you in a great state of mind, period. I think we need to take what action is necessary to strongly consider implementing this before that deadline. That's my take on it.
Yeah, Councilman, I would agree with you there. And even with my position of not wanting to raise taxes, I think at a minimum what you could do is you could pull from the unused fund balance to help cover even the $300,000 for these one-time supplementals within the budget. That then opens up the reoccurring revenue moving forward, because you're doing that moving around. So I'm in support of it. I know you're in support of it. Council, are we good? Okay, so Dan, I think you have direction. Bring, whether it's a budget amendment, whether it's an action that we have to take a vote on during the next regular agenda, whatever would be deemed appropriate to give you guys the reassurance to go back to our provider to have this option opened up. I think you have that support from council.
Would it be okay to talk about how much, what type of percentage? We want to help with dependent coverage is good. That's the first time council has said that I know of, so that's good. How much do you want to help? Is that a percentage? Is it a dollar figure? Is it, per person?
Well, what did you have in mind with the $300,000 that was proposed?
$300,000 to $1 million too.
right? It's a huge range, and the reason for that is because it depends. You know, if it's 25% towards family or 25% towards dependent, spouse or just children, the numbers are completely different, you know, if it's 50% or 100%. So now keep in mind, not all of the employees want or need full family coverage, right? Some are empty nesters now. Some are young families that or their spouse covers their insurance or whatever. So it's not 100 people times $3,000 a month or whatever, you know, times 12. It's not that much, right, Chad? Okay, good. Before I said that out loud.
Would it be too much to ask, Dan, at the next meeting when you will be looking for a formal action to be taken, maybe bring us back 3 options with 3 different dollar amounts?
Perfect.
And then we can choose one of those 3, maybe something in between, but being able to look at what the percentage would be and the price tag associated with that percentage allows us to kind of see the picture. I'm not sure, Council, if you guys are good with that.
But I have I just want one point of clarity. Did I understand that whether it's 1 or 10 family members, the cost is the same, or did I misunderstand that?
So that is correct. With the family plan, that is every member of your family. The other options are employee only, employee and spouse, which is just your spouse, or employee and children. Now, at that point, it doesn't matter the amount of children. It's just all children. It can be 1, it can be 9.
Okay, that's, and that can also, you know, when employees look at their package, salary benefits package, having, you know, certain benefits will weigh in on the ability to retain them when there's a good benefits package along with it. That's, okay, thank you.
And if I remember, one of the things that you're probably remembering too, is I mentioned, it's not cumulative like you would think. We'll just make it easy. If it's $1,000 a month for your spouse or $1,000 a month for your dependents, you would think that if it was family, then it would be 1 + 1. It would be $2,000 for your family. It is not. It's $3,000. So, or whatever. It goes up significantly when it goes to family coverage.
So I think Dan and Chad, you guys have what you need in regards to that. I think there's also an openness from what I could tell that if we pull from at least a little bit from the unused fund balance, maybe for those one-time expenditures to possibly hire some of those positions, maybe for that at a minimum, you have a list of what those positions would be and the dollar amount associated with those positions. And then I would be prepared that, you know, I saw some note taking as well. There might be a desire from council here to maybe all employees get a 3%, but maybe there's additional wiggle room for some specific employees that the discretion is left up to the department heads. I would say be prepared to have that conversation as well. But Dan, anything from you and the team, any additional questions or clarification that you guys might need tonight?
I think that's pretty clear. This was very helpful for the staff.
Tammy, do you want to talk through very briefly this planning calendar, or do you want to do that for the agenda item?
I'm sorry, can we do that during the agenda item?
Yes,
There's
ma'am.
been a few emails come in, speaker requests.
That you got to get situated? Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
they need to print for you that
Of course.
came in while y'all were having the workshop.
Perfect, we'll cover that. Dan, you're good? Yes.
The few columns you mentioned about we could pull some here, pull some from there, not put money into this there, into this particular fund, could you possibly put that down on paper for us? The different things you're looking at and what you see as far as, hey, we could use this or use that possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that and run it through Dan and Rosie just to verify that my chicken scratch is correct and something to consider.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can do that. And then if any other council members have any ideas, any suggestions, anything that you might want to see differently done, Councilman Acree, I know that you had talked about for Acree Lake, making sure that there was a line item in the budget for that. There is in the capital projects fund, so we've got that in there. But if there's any suggestions or comments, let's make sure to get that to Dan and Rosie and the team, and then we can have that formal presentation at the next meeting as well. All right, so with that, what we will do is we will adjourn this city council workshop at 5:59 p.m. We'll take about a 5-minute or so recess, and then we'll re-adjourn at, let's go with 6:05. Thank you. Everybody was already quiet. Very nice. All right, we will officially call this regular session of Manvel City Council meeting August 7th, 2023 to order at 6:09 p.m. We have 6 of 7 council members here. I made sure to let Councilwoman Sarmiento know that I would make this announcement publicly. So she was here for the workshop. She is going to join us back as soon as she can. Her daughter is entering a new school tonight. Family always comes first, and so it's the meet the teacher night tonight. And so she is prioritizing family, and I think we should all applaud her for that. So what we'll do now is we are going to do the invocation. And with us tonight, we have Pastor David Wright of the Manvel Biker Church. Pastor, if you can please come forward, and thank you for being here.
Mary asked me to say a few words before the prayer. I've lived here since around 1972. Manvel sure has changed. I'm thanking the Lord for that. Some of it's been really good, some of it hasn't, but Manvel has progressed. I knew the lady who designed the patch that says Manvel City on the Rise. It's been a long time. Would y'all bow your heads with me, please? Oh God, we come before you with gratitude. We thank you for being a God of love who is with us right now in this very room, and we know that you never leave us nor forsake us. I thank you. Excuse me. I thank you, God, for tonight, for your servants, our mayor, our city manager, our city staff, our council members. I give thanks for the way of service that they've chosen to take us on behalf of all of us here. We all come to this room tonight as complex human beings, carrying burdens, carrying joy, carrying hope, trusting that you alone can hold us together, O Lord, in your love and your peace. Help us, Lord, to trust you more than our fears, more than our wounds, more than our accomplishments. But Lord, may we lean on your understanding and your everlasting arms tonight. In the name of Jesus, whose perfect love sets us free from all our fears. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. For the inspirational reading, it is I guess, giving it tonight. This is a quote that I heard recently, which I love. It says, a society grows great when old men plant trees, the shade in which they know they will never sit in. Been thinking about that one a lot. If y'all will join me to please say the pledges. You may be seated. We now have a presentation, which is a proclamation for August 15th, which is Indian Independence Day. Do we have anybody that's here to receive this proclamation tonight? No? Okay. So I will go ahead and read this proclamation. The proclamation reads, whereas on August 15th, 1947, India gained its independence from the British Empire. And whereas the Indian Independence Act of 1947 was approved by the British Parliament, which allowed the Constituent Assembly of India to write the Constitution of India, marking the beginning of India's independence after many years of British rule. And whereas the Indian independence movement was led by Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Sardar Patel. And through their message of nonviolence and civil disobedience, they inspired civil rights leaders from around the world. And whereas India's Independence Day is one of India's 3 national holidays and is celebrated by 1.3 billion people across the country with flag hosting ceremonies, kite flying, and parades. And whereas diversity is one of Manvel's great strengths, and Manvel is proud to be home to an Indian American population who contribute greatly to the social, economic, and civic health of the city. And whereas the city of Manvel joins with our Indian American community in celebrating India's independence. Now, therefore, I, Dan Davis, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Manvel, Texas, do hereby proclaim August 15th, 2023 as the 76th Indian Independence Day. Thank you very much. So we now have a public hearing, which originally I thought that all of y'all were here to speak on Joe's Abraham being appointed as the zoning official, but then I realized it was probably for the public hearing, so lucky you, Joe's. So I'm going to read off the public hearing, and then we have a lot of citizens that have submitted public comments for this. So what I'll do is I'll go through the list and read out the names of the individuals who might be here to speak. When I call your name, please come forward if you would like to speak. And then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. At the end of going through the list, if there's anybody that's here and your name has not been called, please raise your hand. We'll have you come up to the front and you can speak on the item that this public hearing is about. So the public hearing is to hear input from the public regarding an ordinance of the City of Manvel, Texas, amending ordinance number 2020-0-14, being the ordinance pertaining to zoning and development-related provisions and requirements for Del Bello Lakes Planned Unit Development, PUD, to 1, authorize the NAICS Use Code 447110 gasoline stations with convenience stores. And 2, amend signage related provisions for a property located at the northwest corner of Del Bello Boulevard and Cedar Creek Lane intersection, providing for severability and providing a penalty in an amount not to exceed $2,000 for each day of violation of any provision hereof. Let me go through this big stack of papers here. So we have here a printout. Just I want to make sure that council, we all see this. This is the packet of individuals who spoke during the 2 PD&Z meetings, who all spoke as citizens in opposition to the zoning change. So the first person that I have here is from a Tawana Stevens. Tawana, are you here tonight? Okay, Tawana said that she is a resident of Del Bello Lakes, address 5910 Lake Bridge Lane, and Tawana is against building a gas station in our neighborhood due to safety and health concerns. Thanks in advance for your time. We next have a submission from Cortland, Washington. Cortland, are you here? Okay, Cortland submitted a comment stating that they are at 4410 Millstone Drive, and they are in opposition to the gas station. We have a Deidre and Rich Lane. Would you like to speak? Yes, I would. All right, please come forward, ma'am. I'll ask that we do have a handheld if you would prefer, or we have the stand microphone if you can just speak loudly and clearly, state your name and address, and we will start the 3 minutes as soon as you start speaking. And Thank you for being here.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Deirdre Lane, and my husband Rich and I live at 4326 Limestone Terrace. I appreciate your time this afternoon and your thoughtfulness as you consider our concerns this afternoon. We are opposed to a gas station being built in Del Bello Lake subdivision. A gas station will bring unwanted risk and dangers to our community. The proposed location requires patrons to come into our subdivision to patronize the gas station, and they will have to exit off the interstate and come directly into our subdivision to patronize this location. The crimes at gas stations include, but are not limited to, purse snatchings, automobile theft, and damage and destruction of property. At gas stations in the city and surrounding areas, we've even seen murder at these locations. This criminal element across the street from our homes diminishes the safety and security of our neighborhood. In addition, gas stations pose an environmental risk of leaks, spills, and fires. Truck tankers will have to come into our subdivision carrying hundreds of gallons of gasoline on our streets, causing damage to the street, potholes, and increased cost to the city, quite frankly, to make those repairs. For these reasons, we are vehemently opposed to this request for a gas station in Del Bello Lake subdivision and would ask you to vote no on the proposed ordinance change. Thank you.
Thank you, Deidre. Deidre, is Rich here? And would you like to speak, sir? No, you're any good husband. You're like, I agree with my wife, right? Good man, good man. All right, next we have Karina Lascano. Okay, Karina is at 5906 Lake Ridge Lane. And Karina said, we do not want the gas station for safety, environmental, and aesthetics of our community, of the community. Okay, I'm going to butcher this name. How do you say that? Right there. That's the first name.
Estratios.
Is that correct? Okay, is that you? All right, would you like to come forward and speak? My apologies. I was like, oh, this is going to be bad. How do you say your first name and your last name?
Efstratios Koutroumpakis. It's a Greek name, if you cannot say.
All right. Well, thank you for being here. You have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to express our concerns about the construction of the gas station. I'm a cardiologist at MD Anderson Cancer Center, and I'm here with my wife, Melina. She's a nurse anesthetist at Methodist Hospital. We moved to Del Bello Lakes and Manvel because to raise our family because it's a clean, safe, healthy, and quiet neighborhood. And we're excited. It's convenient to commute back and forth to work. It's near the medical center where we work. A lot of healthcare providers working at the medical center have also moved or are considering moving here. Please don't let that change by allowing the construction of the gas station. There are major health concerns, not to mention safety concerns and concerns relating to the aesthetics of the area. I'm very hopeful that you will consider our voice when you vote tonight. And again, thank you very much for allowing us to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And as somebody that drives to the medical center, I'm sure that you're looking forward to that traffic and that construction being done. Next, we have Charles Bellocura. Charles? All right, no Charles. Charles lives at 6246 Eagle Mountain Lane and says, I am a resident of Del Bello Lakes. My family and I are opposed to the proposal to put a gas station with convenience store within Cedar Creek Lane as it attracts traffic and safety risks for our children running around our streets. In addition, it adds up pollution to our community, which we try to avoid. Please hear the homeowner's voice regarding the matter. Next, we have Athena Reynolds. Athena lives at 4203 Martin Ridge Drive. And Athena writes, I oppose amending Del Bello Lakes Planned Development PUD to 1, authorize NAICS use code 447110, gasoline stations with convenience stores, and 2, amend signage-related provisions. Next, we have Tina Nikube. Tina is at 431.
Did she raise her hand?
Oh, would you like to speak? No. Are you sure? Come on, you know you want. Oh, okay. All right, well, Tina, thank you for being here. Tina resides at 4318 Limestone Terrace, and Tina writes, I'd like to reiterate my continued objection to the zoning change that would allow this gas station to be built in the neighborhood. Thank you. Next, we have Zaywei Tao. Okay, this individual writes, I don't agree to build a gas station that borders our Del Bello community. Next, we have Donna Barber. Donna, would you like to speak? Donna, thank you for being here. Please just make sure to speak loudly and clearly into the microphone, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Donna Barber. I live at 4422 Meadow Shore Lane, Manvel, Texas. I second everything everyone has already said. And I'm so glad that you guys had the man of God come up here and pray, because I'm coming from a biblical prospect. So Here we go. 1 Timothy 6 and 17, New International Version says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant. And I'm speaking to the city council now. I'm speaking to the city of Manvel, because this will benefit you all versus benefiting us as homeowners. So it says, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who has richly provided us with everything for our enjoyment, us as homeowners. Okay, Philippians 4:19 says, and this same God who takes care of me will supply the city of Manvel, the city on the rise, all your needs from his glorious riches. Okay, Proverbs 10 and 22 says, the blessings of the Lord maketh rich and addeth no sorrow to the residents of Del Bello. Okay. And Corinthians also says, and God will generously provide all our needs, including the city of Manvel. So I'm praying tonight that you all will hear our voices and hear us and know that we are opposed to this gas station. We do not want it for so many reasons that have already been spoken. So please hear our prayers in our hearts.
Donna, thank you for being here, and I feel like we need to start a Bible study at your house every Wednesday night, right? When you give communion, you make us drink 2 juices and 2 pieces of bread. All right, we have Kevin Barber. Would you like to speak, sir?
Sure.
Thank you for being here, Kevin. If you can please just state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Kevin Barber. I also live at 4422 Meadow Shore Lane with Pastor Donna Barber. I would like to say this. Last year, there's a sign, I think it's still there, that says, this community was rated the #1 community to live in. And I don't think we want to lose that ranking the following year. Now, we pay some of the highest property taxes in the state, some of the highest property taxes in the community. And then for us, all we have is to show for is a 5-foot pool. You could at least gave us a 5'5" pool. That didn't happen. Now, you had a budget meeting earlier today. You talked about the infrastructure, being competitive with the surrounding communities. There's so much more that Manvel could do to bring in residents, because we know the next 3 to 5 years can be very difficult to move in Manvel, property taxes. But you bring in more residents, since residency here, you bring in more revenue. You bring in more revenue, then you have money to do the things that Manvel wants to do. But we have to have infrastructure to do that. So I'm proposing that you start looking at other positive things to do as far as building. I don't think I know a gas station is not going to be the key, but you can start looking at other avenues. You can start looking at expanding maybe a recreation center to have something more positive for maybe job fairs for Manvel, maybe a clubhouse, something positive that's going to bring the people in and bring the revenue in. Because right now, compared to Meridiana, Pearland, Houston, other surrounding areas, and that's environment where we're hitting the bottom of the totem pole. So we need to do something to bring in the revenue, which will bring in the people. And the gas station is not going to do it. So I asked you to look at other avenues to bring in revenue for Manvel, for Del Bello, for the surrounding community of Manvel, or the surrounding area of Manvel, that will bring in more revenue, bring something positive to the city of Manvel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kevin, and I think you just volunteered yourself for a future board or committee, so just letting you know. Next, we have Carlos Martinez. Carlos wrote that they won't be able to be here in attendance, and they live at 6203 Camden Shore Drive. And Carlos writes, we won't be able to attend the meeting, but this is to express my disapproval for a gas station to be built in Del Bello Lakes for the reasons that we have stated during last week's meeting. Next, we have Marcus Hill. Okay, yes, ma'am. So we have from Marcus Hill at 6219 Camden Shore Drive. I am against the proposed amendment to Ordinance 2023-0-21 to allow a gas station to be built in or near the Del Bello Lakes subdivision. And thank you for being here, ma'am. Next, we have Regale Hill. Are you Ms. Hill? Okay, well, we know Ms. Hill's against it as well. Thank you for being here, ma'am. Next, we have Keisha Britton. Okay, Keisha Britton is at 4223 Millers Creek Lane. And Keisha writes, I am opposed to the zoning of a gas station in Del Bello Lakes neighborhood. So next we have some speaker participation registration forms that have been filled out. And I'll call you forward. We have Violetta Zaportex. Zaporteza. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Please come up, and if you can state your first name, last name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Billy or Violetta Zaporteza. I live in Del Bello Lake subdivision at 5706 Dancing Oaks Court. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Manvel City Council. As a former environmental investigator with 27 years of experience with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, I stand before you today to express serious concerns about the proposal to build a gas station near our beloved neighborhood. While we understand the importance of economic growth and development, we cannot overlook the potential environmental consequences that may arise from such a decision. Gas stations are known to contribute to air pollution, water contamination, and soil degradation. During my time with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, our primary responsibility was to safeguard the well-being of communities and protect the environment. So please, allow me to shed some light on the potential environmental impacts. Increased traffic around the gas station may lead to higher emissions of harmful pollutants such as volatile organic compounds, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. This can adversely affect air quality and pose health risk to residents, especially children and the elderly. Additionally, the potential risk of soil and groundwater contamination from gasoline leaks and spills cannot be underestimated. Such occurrences may seep into the ground, leading to long-term damage to local ecosystems and drinking water supplies, posing a serious threat to public health. As a community, we must explore alternative solutions that align with our values of sustainability and environmental responsibility. Consideration of alternative locations or exploring cleaner energy options can help mitigate the negative impacts and promote a healthier living environment for everyone. Toyota, who is next to the proposed site, is moving away from internal combustion engines and heavily prioritizing a shift into the creation of more electric vehicles that will never need a gas station. I urge the Council to prioritize the long-term health and well-being of our community and carefully assess the potential environmental repercussions before making a decision. Let us join forces to find eco-friendly alternatives that will benefit both Manvel's growth and the preservation of our precious environment.
Thank you, ma'am. I apologize, but your time has run out.
Oh, okay. Well, together we can build a thriving community.
She's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
That prioritizes the health and prosperity of our residents.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Next, I'm sorry, I'm not able to read this name, so I'm going to read off the address. It's 5702 Dancing Oaks Court. Oh, that's you. Yes, I apologize for not being able to read this.
Cursive.
I'm a millennial. We can't read cursive. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Pamela Hardy, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Shepard. We live at 5702 Dancing Oaks Court, and I want to say to you, we moved here from California because His uncle said this was a wonderful place to live, so this is where we decided to retire. Fact, a crime occurs every 6 hours and 23 minutes in Manvel. Your home is 300% more likely to be robbed without a home security in Manvel. A correlation between such commercial operations and property values is well documented, and it is a genuine worry for all residents who consider their homes not just a place of residence, but also a long-term investment. Studies have shown a correlation between the presence of gas stations and the increased crime rates. The 24/7 operations, such as businesses, often attract a host of criminal activities, including, as you heard earlier, theft, robbery, I have braces, and vandalism. This could have severe implications for the safety of our community and the general sense of tranquility that we have tirelessly worked all of our lives for. We have people from New York, we have people who have come from South Carolina who have come to live in Manvel because we were told this was an incredible place to live, to raise kids, and to retire. Party days are over. We're not trying to party hardy. That's part of my name, but we're definitely not trying to do that. From an environmental health perspective, the proposed gas station, I'm looking at my time, carries potential health risks to our community. And what I have done, like Billy, I am public health. So public health exposure to volatile organic compounds, the VOCs, often released refueling can profoundly affect human health. Long-term exposure definitely can lead to severe health issues such as respiratory problems, liver and kidney damage, and certain cancers. Moreover, several studies have linked the proximity to gas stations to low birth weight. That is my area of expertise, is low birth weight in children. So I may not have any children. I have children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So when they come to visit, that is important to us, as I'm sure those who have children and grandchildren. So we would instead not expose our community to these potential risks, especially when health and safety of our children and our future generations are at stake. We understand about the need to develop and the progress within our community. However, this development should not come at the expense of our community's health, safety, and property values. Thank you so much for your time, and I made it.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments. Next, we have Geneva Rivera. Thank you for being here, ma'am. If you can state your first name, last name, and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Geneva Rivera, 5803 Dancing Oaks Court. I just would like to say the commonality that we all have in this room is we are opposed to a gasoline station in our neighborhood, our community. It's just not right. There are gasoline stations throughout Manvel, practically on every corner, and we kind of don't understand why one is trying to be built where we live. So please, please do not put a gasoline station in a convenience store in our small community. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, ma'am, and for your comments. Next, we have Monica Britton. Monica, thank you for being here. If you can state your first name, last name, and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, Monica Britton. I am at 4415 Meadow Shore Lane. You guys have seen me up here twice already, so I'm not going to be like Maxine Waters and reclaim my time and take up 3 minutes. But I agree with everyone else that we are opposed to the gas station for all the reasons that you guys have heard already. I just wanted to come up to give an update on the proposed petition that I created. As of this morning, there were 191 signatures opposed to the gas station. I sent that information to Jose today, and so just wanted to let you guys know there are 191 people who are opposed to this, including the rest of the people in this room. So thank you.
Thank you, Monica, for being here. So what we will do now is we will open it up to anybody else that wishes to speak. I do know that we have the applicants that are here, and what we'll do is we'll call you forward to give your presentation during the actual agenda item. But what I will do is the first call for anybody wishing to speak for the public hearing that has not yet spoken. Yes, sir. If you can please come forward, state your first name, last name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Larry Sloan, 4226 Miller Creek Lane, and I oppose the station. One, we have a town center that's going in right across the street from us. HEB will have a service station there. We already have a Chevron station that's directly across from there. We have a Shell that's right there, and an Exxon that's right there at Highway 6. So I don't see where there would be a need to bring a station further into our community that will cause irreparable harm. And the reason I say irreparable harm is because basically service stations have a tendency to get robbed on a regular basis, therefore causing gunshots that could enter into homes that would be behind that service station or traffic that is coming down Del Bello Lane. I'm a retired 38-year oil man, so I understand the importance of gas for the community, but not for a residential community like Del Bello Lake. I know what gas can do. I know how it's produced. I've seen it. I worked the oil field, the pipelines and all. I do not want to see that in our neighborhood because our neighborhood is a new developed neighborhood. We have Panona and Rodeo that is right across the street from us basically. They haven't put a service station over there. They haven't requested a service station over there. So why allow them to put one in Del Bello Lake? Because this community was built. The reason I bought out here, I moved from Kingwood to Del Bello Lake because I want to be one closer in, and also I realized that they don't have to worry about all those service stations. That's on every corner. We don't need a service station on every corner. And if our main traffic is 288, they can get off at Highway 6 or they can get out further down the road. They don't need to come up in our neighborhood and then go back out. That is not necessary for us. Therefore, please hear us, hear our voice, listen to what we're saying. We definitely and strongly oppose that. And as the pastor said back here, what God has for Manvel, Manvel will get it. Manvel have other ways of getting revenue without putting a little bit of gas station at the corner of Del Bello and Creek, because that ain't gonna bring you no more money than what you get from taxes from the residents in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your words tonight, sir. How long did you live in Kingwood for?
Too long.
Hey, that's where I met my. Oh, that's why. That's where I used to live. I met my wife there, so it's a special place in my heart. But thank you for your comments. We will now do a second call for anybody. Yes, ma'am. If you can please come forward, state your first name, last name, address, then you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Hello, my name is LaSandra Baldwin. I stay at 4426 Meadow Shore Lane in Del Bello Lakes. And I heard what everybody say, and I agree with them, but mostly I'm speaking for the babies, the children, and the elderly that lives in our neighborhood, because they walk through the neighborhoods. We already have Toyota dealership there, and when they're test driving their cars, they come through our neighborhood flying, knowing that we have children, babies, people that are walking that can't cross the road real quick. And also, I'm speaking because of the pollution, the children. If a gas, chemical, or something breaks out, the gas station blows up. That's hazard to children, not only children, but also to us and to me as well, because I'm a 100% disabled veteran, and that's one of the reasons why I have my disability is because of gasoline. So I really oppose having a gas station there for the children's sake, for the baby's sake, and for our elderly.
Thank you, ma'am, for your comments, and thank you for your service to our country. We appreciate that. Yes. I think you know the drill. Let's see if you get it without me saying it.
I'll try to be a little calm this side. My name is Anthony Rivera. I live at 5803 Dancing Oaks Court. I wasn't going to talk there. My wife, she was up here a third time. But when I was sitting there listening to everybody speak, I just was thinking about when I retired from the military and I got a job. I got a job for the city of Beaufort as a building inspector. Then I moved to the Midlands in Greenville and got a job as a zoning inspector and building inspector. Then I went to Greenville as a building official. And one thing that it dawned on me that all those municipalities had in common is that we all had a motto, and that was the protection and life and safety of our citizens. So that's what I want to come out and just to reiterate that isn't that what a municipality is supposed to do for their citizens? Is to always think about the protection and life and safety of their citizens. So that's what I want to come up there to give you that food for thought in your mind for what we all had to say as far as not wanting this gasoline station in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. We appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you for your service. And if you're ever interested in coming and working for the city, when you were saying some of those things, I was looking at Dan there. So I believe we have someone else. Thank you for being here tonight, sir.
Hello. My name is Glenn Waller. I'm a resident of Del Bello Lakes at 5715 Dancing Oaks Courts. I've been employed with CenterPoint Energy for 31 years, so I have seen a lot of growth in Houston and surrounding areas. Seen all of this stuff built up on 288 when I started long time ago, all right? So when I see better neighborhoods, I don't see gas stations inside those neighborhoods. If I think about Westview, Braeswood, Hirshaw Village, yes, gas stations around the neighborhoods, but not in the neighborhood. So we are new, most of us, I would think, are new, proud citizens of Manvel and of Del Bello. Right? I know I am. And a gas station where that proposed location is on the main street with a lake on the side of it, right? A gas station would immediately diminish what we have come to value. Our homes, our savings, our families, safety, right? And we do not want that. And you do not want that, right? So with that, I am definitely opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Would anybody else wish to speak? Going to do the third call for the public hearing. Going once. Oh, you made it just in time. Thank you for being here tonight, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Marcaria Stallings. I live at 5511 Cedar Creek Lane, which is directly at the end of where this gas station would be built. And I oppose to this gas station as a young mom of 2 little girls and a new homeowner. My husband is also here with me. We live on Cedar Creek and we walk at the lake all the time with my girls in the stroller. We feel like a gas station would make us feel unsafe, and the kids that get on the bus stop at Cedar Creek Lane, they would be unsafe to predators, and the crime and gas stations might bring sex trafficking there because there's other gas stations that deal with those things. And Houston is known for that. And even though we're in Manvel, that could just allow people to come to our community to do those things and potentially harm our children of Del Bello. And then we also live on Cedar Creek, and we deal with the Toyota drivers coming in our cul-de-sac, driving really fast. And so having a gas station right there would have more people come down into our cul-de-sac, making U-turns, potentially looking at like what our homes look like, who's there during the day for more potential robberies right there on Cedar Creek Lane. And so I just want to say that I agree with what everybody else said and that we oppose to the gas station being built.
Thank you for your comments. How old are your girls?
I have a 2-year-old and a newborn.
Woo, you guys are busy. How do you find time for the gym, sir? It looks like you've been, man, to station you at the corner, scare all the crime away right there. Well, congratulations, y'all. Third calling, anyone else wishing to speak for this pub? Yes, sir. Are we saving the best for last here? So if you can please state your name, first name, last name, address in 3 minutes.
My name is Roy Darnell Thomas. I live at 4407 Meadow Shore Lane. It's the second house from the corner. So the proposed gas station will be catty corner from my house. I oppose the bill and the proposal. And I think it's one of inconvenience. We're going to be inconvenienced over the next several years with the bridge build. And then I know you're moving as a city basically to that area. So I think that, we are going to allow and accept that because it's part of the build. But in terms of our community, I ride bikes. From where I'm from in Colorado, we had a lot of trails. It was very environmental friendly. So, I'm pushing for us to get trails, to get people out walking, to improve their health. A gas station, all that's going to do is basically drive people into their homes. No one's going to want to walk past there. No one's going to want to share that with their dogs, their children. There's a potential for pollution. And we just want a closed-in community. We want somewhere that we can call home. I'm sure everyone else probably has somewhere that they live where they wouldn't want a gas station directly across the street, especially considering what we pay. Again, highest property taxes are in Fort Bend, right, if I'm correct, in Brazoria. So I feel like we deserve a little bit more consideration. So I do oppose that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. And to let you know, we are going to be looking to update our master thoroughfare plan soon, and we'd love to get your input and feedback on that, especially in regards to trails. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, so we are going to officially close this public hearing at 6:50 p.m. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who showed up tonight to speak. For y'all to call Manvel home is it's a special place, and for you guys to all be relatively newer to the community to come out in force like this, it makes a statement. Not many communities would come together like this, so I appreciate you coming out. What we're going to do next is turn it over to public comments. We have one submitted and then one individual that has signed up to speak. So the submitted comment comes from Lori Simmerhansel. Lori writes, I am unable to attend tonight in person. With school about to start, I'd like to make a request for MPD to patrol Wilson Road and Large Avenue. People speed and do not stop at the four-way stop sign or come to a rolling stop. Plus, kids walk on both roads. I've called MPD several times before, but they only sat on Large for a day or two. I would like to request from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. I make sure I'm home prior to 3 if I have to out in the afternoon. Otherwise, I would not be able to get in to drive with all the traffic. Traffic is very bad on Wilson and Large. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you. Thank you, Lori, for your comments. And next we have somebody that's signed up to speak, Jason Fabre with Centerpoint Energy. Jason, thank you for being here tonight.
Mayor, I don't have any agenda. I just wanted to introduce myself as the Government Relations Director with Centerpoint Energy. I live at 15211 Redwood Run Court in Houston. I am a former resident of Manvel. I enjoyed my time here. I lived here for roughly 5 years before the company transferred into Mississippi, and my wife took me to a different area of town when we moved back. So this was no agenda, just to say hello. We look forward to working with you and the council and department heads as we work towards adding value, resiliency, and other programs to our system for both the natural gas and electric. As you know, we serve all of Manvel for electric service and most of Manvel for your natural gas service. That's really all I had, was to say hello and welcome and look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you for being here. Appreciate it, sir. Look at that. You get a round of applause. Any thoughts on the gas station? No.
Unfortunately, on behalf of Centerpoint Energy, I'm not able to make any comment.
There you go. There you go. That's why they pay you the big bucks right there. Well, thank you, sir, for your comments. Y'all didn't know you were coming to a comedy show tonight. So that wraps up all of our public comments. We'll next move to the city manager update. Dan?
I don't have any jokes for you tonight, Mayor. I'm sorry, but just wanted to update you on a few things. Obviously, we've been very busy with the budget, but while we're working on that, we have also met with Alvin ISD. Had a great kickoff meeting with them. We're going to start having a monthly meeting with them to just kind of stay on the same page. You know, we know development is coming, and they need all the information for their demographers and everything that they can get to try and anticipate the growth. We also had our monthly meeting with Meridiana and Valencia and Pomona, so we're continuing to meet with them. We met with MUD 47 and MUD 79. So some of the council members are sitting in on those meetings, and as is the mayor. And if you're interested in any of those meetings, I'm happy to invite you. As long as we don't have a quorum, we're okay. Bobby, I anticipated him saying that. We actually have an upcoming meeting tomorrow with CNR3, and I think the mayor and Harry and Larry are sitting in on that with us to try and talk about the interlocal agreement and Lake Acree, and then any other projects that they may have going on in the city of Manvel. So I'll give you an update at the next meeting, if not before. Quite frankly, I might send you an email if it's good news. Next week. I'm sorry, this week on Wednesday evening, SMDA, or the TERS board, will be meeting to talk about their bonding capacity. Joe Morrow and Tim Austin will be giving a presentation Wednesday night. And then next week, we're doing a monthly meeting with Alvin Manvel Area Chamber of Commerce to kind of, same thing, keep them in the loop on stuff that's coming into town, and that way they can also communicate with us about upcoming ribbon cuttings and groundbreakings and everything. So that's next Monday, and also PD&Z is next Monday. Some of the ordinances that we're working on right now, the sign ordinance, which you've got the second reading here in a little bit on your agenda tonight. We're also working on the grease traps and food establishments, food truck ordinance, fence permits, tree trimming in the right-of-way, just to name a few of the things that we're working on. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, burn ban. We're not there yet, but it is seemingly imminent. Everybody's looking over at Joe, so I've lost the crowd. Joe, do you want to talk for a minute on the burn ban coming?
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I've been tracking the KBDI since May. We did have that little bit of a reprieve right after 4th of July, which lowered that number, getting it well below the 400 range. But since then, we've gone back up. As of today, we're at 569. If we stay on the same track by Thursday, we should be over the 600 mark, which at that point is where we need to seriously consider moving forward with a burn ban. That will be during the time that we won't have a council meeting, so I have to work with the city manager on that, and of course the mayor for an emergency declaration if we go for that. Moving forward, several of the surrounding counties have already instituted burn bans. Chambers County, Wharton County, as well as Matagorda County have all issued burn bans already, and Galveston County. So we are basically being surrounded. Fort Bend has not yet. It hasn't hit the number of 600. So I keep an eye on that every day. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dan. We will now move on to the consent agenda. I believe Councilman Opliger has a motion that he would like to make.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to move item number 2, the sign ordinance, back to the regular agenda.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Councilman, could you just take a moment just to explain your desire for
I would just like to take a couple minutes to make sure I have a complete understanding of what we're going to be, what the end look is going to look like, and then seek any other feedback, because this is going to change the face of Manvel. And I think it needs another discussion.
Okay, thank you, sir. So what we're going to do now is we're going to vote on removing agenda item number 2 from the consent agenda. I noticed that on the agenda, we did not have a place for items removed. So what we will do is we will move this agenda item to directly after the ordinance regarding the gas station. So it will fill in that second spot on the agenda. Tammy, if you're good with that. Okay. So we will vote on removing this from the consent agenda. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion to remove consent agenda item 2 passes unanimously, 7-0. Now, do I have any comments or questions on the rest of the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Consent agenda passes 7-0. We will now move to agenda item number 1, which is going to be consideration and possible action to approve the first of 2 readings of ordinance number 2023-0-21. I believe Dan and Joe's, you guys have a presentation to give us on this?
Yes, sir. Did I misunderstand, or did you want to do the next item?
We're going to do agenda item number 1 next, and then we're going to move the sign ordinance discussion to after this one.
Okay.
So that way the residents here, we can take care of them first.
Apologies.
And then what we'll do is I have to step out for 1 minute. So Joe, we'll have you do your presentation. I know we have the applicants here. We can have them come forward and speak, and then we'll continue on from there.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This is a request for an amendment to the Del Bello Lake SPUD. And the request is, number 1, to authorize NAICS code 447110, which is gasoline stations with convenience stores. And they're also requesting some signage-related provisions to be added pertaining to the gas station use. Just a little bit of background, Del Bello Lakes is a planned unit development which was established in 2017 through a specific ordinance. That ordinance was amended in 2020 to allow temporary billboard signage for residential development. It was further amended that same year to provide specific wall signage and pylon sign related provisions for Keating Toyota's site. The point being that the ordinance has been amended a couple of times. This is not the first amendment that is being requested. The applicant currently is in discussion with potential buyer who's looking at this particular site to develop it as a gas station with convenience store. The PUD document that was adopted in terms of its zoning and land use allowance directly reflects what we have within our zoning regulations and the provision for light commercial district. And within the light commercial district, we have a specific use permit requirement for gas station with convenience stores. And it also has a predetermined condition that this use cannot be located within a 2-mile radius from another similar use. So given that fact, that's what triggers the need for this amendment so that this particular property can be considered within the PUD document, similar to how Keating Toyota site was considered. And in terms of zoning, the PUD specifically allows for that particular use at that particular location. This particular request was presented to the Planning Development and Zoning Commission twice, and both the times we had public hearing scheduled at the regular meetings. We had several residents who came out and spoke in opposition to the request. The applicant has provided their reasoning in written format, and they've provided some explanation and a couple of reports and exhibits that's included in the packet, whereby their reasoning is that based on the location being near existing car dealership and proximity to 288 and being at a corner separated from residential areas by 2 streets, they see this as a favorable location for this type of land use. They've provided us some information and some exhibits that kind of show their prototypes. They have other gas stations that's been developed and that are ongoing, so they've provided that information. They've also, after the 2 public hearings we had at the Planning Development and Zoning Commission, the applicant has also done some research, and they've provided some information, one pertaining to the relationship of property values with respect to proximity to gas station, and also they've provided some general information that pertains to TCEQ requirements for gas station. At the Planning Development and Zoning Commission, the commissioners did discuss the project, and they had several clarification questions in terms of what other uses could be considered. They had questions for the applicant. They did have questions for staff as well. One of the issues that was brought was to see if there was a difference between the impact that the gas station would have versus the current impact that Keating Toyota would have in the area. So after all of those discussions, the Planning Development and Zoning Commission unanimously voted to not approve the requested PUD amendment. And staff is also recommending to not approve the PUD amendment based on the policy direction that we have from our zoning ordinance, which includes that predetermined condition of not locating within that 2-mile radius. And this amendment was made, the SUP requirement was included in our zoning ordinance in 2020. And the intent behind that amendment was to avoid clustering of gas station and convenience store type use in a point location like we have nearby. And from the packet you can see, the applicant has provided us with an exhibit which shows that we have 5 gas stations within the 2-mile radius, and that excludes the HEB location that is under construction. And then we have additional, I think, 4 more gas stations right outside the 2-mile radius. So there are several gas stations within the 2-mile radius and immediately outside of it. So based on that policy direction, again, staff is not able to recommend approval of this proposed request. If you all have any questions of staff, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Well, Joes, thank you for that presentation. Before we begin to ask any questions, would the applicants like to speak tonight? All right, please come forward. If you can just state your name and who you're with.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm a representative of the buyer. I'm well aware of the concerns and reservations surrounding the proposed gas station development in the community. Health, crime, and property values, these are valid worries that cannot be brushed aside lightly. We want to ensure that we can provide you all with more insights, in fact, into the business so that I can ease some of the concerns that you all have. But before I get into that, I believe the city needs to also consider all the residential growth and traffic growth that is happening in the area. Based on the current City of Manvel's major thoroughfare map, Del Billo Parkway will become a major thoroughfare with a right-of-way of 120 foot, similar to Highway 6. The road is proposed to extend all the way to CR 397, which will become a 6-mile stretch. And along the 6-mile stretch, there's currently no gas station. TxDOT is also constructing a grade separation on 288 and Del Billo Boulevard that will make it a major intersection, and a lot of traffic will be going through Del Billo Parkway and 288. When situations such as hurricanes, ice freezes, power outages occur, there will be too many residents on the current growth in the area that will rely on the existing stations and grocery stores, which would not be enough to serve the basic essentials such as gas, water, food, and grocery. This is why we think a gas station is needed in this area. We also engaged a third-party company called IMST, which is a national leader in convenience store analysis, and they also stated that they believe a gas station will be needed based on the growth. In terms of property valuation, the proposed gas station development will be a high-end branded station, either Exxon or Chevron, that will cost us nearly $3 to $4 million, as we want to ensure that we complement the master plan development and not be an eyesore. In addition, this site is actually not a hard corner because there's actually a 9,000-foot lot that fronts Cedar Creek Lane, which is not owned by us, and it contains landscaping such as trees and shrubs that will act as a barrier for the residents. On top of that, we are willing to work with the seller and the city to set landscaping guidelines and lighting guidelines so that there is a border of trees so that the local community does not see the gas station from their homes. For the concern on selling homes next to a gas station, this particular land is not directly adjacent to any home lots. The closest home is about 225 feet from the property line, as that should not affect the home values. As far as health, we understand the main concern is, am I safe living next to a gas station, and what safety technology do gas stations have? When it comes to gas stations, it is heavily regulated by Texas Commission on Environmental Quality to ensure there are no leaks and spillage into the property. In addition, we have tanks that are industrial grade, double coated, so that they're improved from the ones in the past. In addition, we have to do monthly and annual reports, as well as TCQ does annual reports for us to make sure we're in compliance. On the topic of crime, which we understand is very important, master plan communities such as Riverstone, Cinco Ranch, and Woodlands are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to develop these communities, and they all contain multiple gas stations within walking distance of homes. Throughout the development, as they understand, it is essential for day-to-day and emergency uses. What we do to mitigate this is we create a high-end customer-friendly service and partner with companies such as Chevron and Exxon who have high standards of branding to ensure there's quarterly inspections happening on this facility from a safety and a customer-friendly standpoint. In summary, gas stations contain multiple fail-safes to ensure there is no leakage of gas. In addition, this location is 225 feet away from the first nearest resident, as far as being concerned from a property valuation, crime, and health standpoint. Lastly, I would like to say that our intention is to complement and provide value and convenience to the current and future residents within this area. We create a high-end, customer-friendly service that I believe the residents will appreciate. And I hope some of the points here either address some of your concerns or at least give some clarification. That's it.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you being here tonight.
Any questions?
So council, we have Sam that's here, Joe's, and our city staff. Any questions or comments from council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? Okay. No motion to approve. That means, Bobby and Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, that means that it dies for a lack of a motion?
It dies for lack of motion, but it never comes before the body, so it could come again. Again, I would recommend a motion to approve and seconded, just so it comes before the body, and then a vote. You don't have to vote for your motion or your second, but at least we'll dispose of the matter.
In that case, I'll make a motion to approve.
And I'll second that motion.
There we go. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion fails 0-7. Sam, thank you for being here. Del Bello Lakes community, thank you for being here as well. You guys can definitely feel free to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I'll give you a minute or two if you guys would like to head out.
It's way too soon, and it's just not the right time. Yeah, 100%. Or the type of development. Now, if we get it to a place where it's like CN master plan, then maybe, but it's extremely different. That doesn't fit what we have here. I'm sorry. It doesn't. Is this a good coffee break?
We're going to grab some coffee real quick, y'all.
We're kicking though, baby.
Meeting now. What we're doing is we're going to interject between agenda item number 1 and agenda item number 2, the item which was removed from the consent agenda, which is approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2023-0-24. And Councilman Opliger, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to cycle back, lack of better words, to make sure to ask questions, because I believe at the last time we talked about this, I asked about the number of eye-catching devices. There's no limit, right? There's no limit on that. That would result in something like this, right? That it would result in something like this. It was also like the big balloons on top of car lots. It would result in something like this on top of a car lot. And we can't control it. We can't stop it. If we pass this, am I Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir. The way that the draft ordinance is written right now,
Right.
the attention-getting devices move from prohibited to allowed,
Right.
essentially
And
without
so
a permit.
thank you. So we just saw a room full of people talking about their property values. Car lots are notorious about putting this kind of stuff on top of their building, right? Eye-catching device, that's what we're talking about. And we're not talking about down the street. This is all of Manvel, all of our city. This is what we're talking about. I'm not going to, Pearland, you look at Pearland, what they're doing, they're making beautification to their city, the landscaping, right? We could do the same thing. There's other avenues that we could do, right? So before we call up with the question, I just want, and Mr. Perry was not here the last time we had this thing, so I don't know if Mr. Perry wants to talk about it, but I just wanted to be sure, I just wanted to make sure that's what's on the table, right? It's not just what's down there. This is all of Manvel. And we won't be able to manage it because that's what our ordinance reads. Now, if that's what y'all are comfortable with, right? It is what it is.
Let me ask a question. Would this allow LED billboard signs to be?
We have a different provision from that. It's already allowed.
No, it would.
Those are regulated elsewhere already.
They're already regulated?
Yes, sir.
In the sign ordinance.
Okay. Well, that was one thing.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, because you're correct, had a medical emergency when this was discussed. So what was going to be on the consent agenda, was this where we were talking about for holidays or religious purposes, or we're just saying we're permitting them point blank, period?
Yes, sir. So the attention-getting device sign, that's the title of it. Again, it's being moved from prohibited signs to, get the verbiage right, allowed signs, which are the following signs are allowed in all districts and do not require a permit. So what it says in the draft ordinance right now, attention-getting device sign, attention-getting device signs shall not extend over or into any street, right-of-way, alley, sidewalk, or other public thoroughfare. All attention-getting device signs shall be kept in good repair, not tattered, faded, or frayed, and all attention-getting device signs shall be on premise. So all of the verbiage about trying to track how many days and all that's all gone from this particular thing, because it was, whenever you actually projected it out on a calendar of the entire calendar year, there was 1 week that they weren't allowed. So it was basically nonsense. When you went around each different holiday and X number of days before and X number of days after, and who are we going to get to track that and keep up with it? So they're either allowed or they're not. Right.
So in essence, and I'm just, for sake of my clarity, so in essence, we're saying as many of those signs, as often, wherever, could be for the time being. And what do we mean by?
Well, hold on. This isn't a conversation.
Correct. The short answer is correct. What the discussion was, in the history so far, we've seen the big M outside of honoraries, and we've seen the one outside of weeklies. That's all we've seen so far. So I think it might have been Councilwoman Sarmiento that mentioned it the first time that, hey, if we're seeing that this is an issue, then we bring it back and we adjust the ordinance accordingly. But right now, this was to sort of, I hate to say legal nonconforming, but there are some things that have been out there. The weeklies is a perfect example. That code enforcement, the old code enforcement, folks didn't have an issue with. It was fine, and then it became not fine once we just got new staff, basically, and then all of a sudden it got on the radar. So it's trying to, for lack of a better term, right or wrong, I guess, that's out there.
And what I'll add to that, Dan, is it's taking it back to what it was, similar to what we're doing with the permit fees later on in the agenda. It's taking a step back to what it was before there were these stringent requirements. Because according to the definition of attention-getting device, there are a lot of other attention-getting devices in the city that would have to come down and that we would expect code enforcement to enforce that would impact a fair bit of our businesses in Manvel. And so there was a meeting that was held with a representative for the business community to work through this And that's kind of how it came to be. And I hope everything's okay medical-wise with you, Councilman.
It's getting there. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, last question, and then I'll rest from it. So even though we didn't bring it into discussion, so you're saying at a future date, if we see, and I don't want to call any city, or if we see just an overabundance of this happening, we still have the legal grounds to come and legislate to ban or remove them?
But any ones that are there can stay. They'll become, if we ban them later, then the ones that are there will be grandfathered. So when we open it up, anybody that has one, if we make them prohibited later, will be able to keep that as a non-conforming sign.
So they would be grandfathered?
Yes.
Which would create a disparity?
Yeah, disparity is one word for it, but it would basically create, lock in the people that had it while during that interim. If that comes to pass later, that council would prohibit them later.
If it's my understanding is that it was there, it was enforced, taken away, so why wasn't it grandfathered the first time, if that's on the table now?
Well, according to Jessica, they've always been prohibited. We just clarified the wording to specifically say they were called wind something devices before.
But see, that's the problem there, is that it was always there, and then the wording was clarified. I'm sorry, it was like a direct attack on the one wind device that was in all of Manvel.
But that was one of the arguments put forth by the weeklies that we were addressing, and then council decided, well, let's go ahead and have a meeting with the business owners, see what they wanted, and come back with the ordinance, and that's the ordinance that came back with that would have resolved a lot of things. But again, it's up to council. This is the second reading, so it's still up to council.
And what I'll say to that, Councilwoman, is within the sign ordinance, there currently is a provision that states that if you have a legal non-conforming attention-getting device or sign, that upon the passage of that ordinance, you had to take it down within 30 days. That's something that hasn't been enforced. So that could be, Councilman Perry, a mechanism that would be used in the future, because that, unless that's been outlawed by the state, but that's something that currently exists within the ordinance.
I think now, though, for removing non-conforming signs, I think you have to provide compensation for the sign. And I don't know what the value of those signs is, but I don't know if that's significant or not, but I think that would now play into it as well.
Well, Councilman Opliger, would you see the benefit in putting a cap on the number of signs? Saying if we put into what's currently allowed, saying if you allowed three per property?
No, I think that it's, quite honestly, it's, if we open Pandora's box, the box is open. I just believe that we're diminishing our property values, whether it's 1 or 20, because the problem is property owners change. Things change, right? So what a gentleman's agreement on one property may be there, 1 or 2, or even by ordinance. Sky's the limit, every 10 foot. And that's kind of, and then we have our code enforcement person driving around, spending time managing that instead of doing other code enforcement things. And I think it's just it just opens another avenue. Oh God, now we're spending more time chasing down signs that are of the opinion of the code enforcement. Oh, that one looks a little tattered. Business owner says, no, it doesn't. That's why I'm just against it. I think it, I promise you drive by any car lot that doesn't have these, and they got the flags flying and the giant gorillas and everything else. So I'm of 0.
We can't legally grandfather that airman, that's what it's called on the internet, over there, and then we wouldn't have to fool with anything else. So what if we do it? I mean, who's gonna oppose it?
I'm not sure, how would you go, you grandfather them by passing something that outlaws them and keeps them and allows them to
Well, I
stay
mean,
there.
that's been a controversy for
We're
a
doing the
while. It's been
opposite.
there, it's been gone, and, there's all kinds of opinions. So what if we make a motion to grandfather that one and somebody seconds it and passes? Is that legal? I mean, does that work or not work?
Well, our goal is to treat, apply our ordinances evenly across the board. That's our goal, that's our practice, that's the legally required, that's
Well, I
our,
understand, but this is controversial. Harry's right about this, could get way out of hand. And, we may be regretting this in a year or so. That's why I'm saying, let's grandfather that there is such a thing and go on with it.
Yeah, Councilman, I think that's a good sentiment that you expressed. I just don't know if legally, if you can take action to legally grandfather something in. But
your action would be to take action and approve this ordinance, and then tomorrow they're legal. And then if more start popping up, you'd have to keep your finger on the pulse, and then when you see them starting to pop up or proliferate to the point where you think it's going to degrade the health, safety, welfare, and property values, all that, then you would come back and prohibit them. But in the meantime, the ones that got in would be able to stay. Yeah, because you'd have to really keep up on that.
Absolutely, and what I'll say to that, Bobby, is that based off of the current ordinance, that if it's not changed, that code enforcement's going to be very busy with certain businesses in Manvel that currently have non-conforming signage that is classified underneath the definition of attention-getting device. So we talk about the potential of the unknown. I think we have to look at our history. We can only go based off of what the facts tell us. And the facts throughout the entire existence of Manvel have said that there's not a proliferation. Could there be? Certainly. But I don't operate off of hypotheticals. I have to operate based off of what I know. And what I know, what the community wants. I know what the history is within the city. But I think we have to heed your words with caution, Councilman Opliger, and I think they are well-founded based off of the history you've seen in other areas. So does anybody on council have any additional comments, or Councilman Lance?
What about the possibility of requiring an annual permit? And we could use that as a yay or nay if something gets out of hand, and we could talk to the business owner and said, you got 15 signs. That's just detrimental to what we're wanting to do, and your permit's denied unless you reduce down to 1 sign or 2 signs.
Oh, Councilman Lance, I mean, to speak to that, I think that it would go to, you'd have to put a cap on the allowance of attention-getting devices on a given property. And as Councilman Opliger said, he has no desire to see that happen. So you could require a permit, which would then, you would establish a cap that they can apply per attention-getting device until they reach that cap. And if they want to go over that cap, then they could come and request a variance from City Council. But I think at that point, while I understand where you're coming from, I think that adds more work. I think at the given point, and I'll let Councilwoman Sarmiento speak, I think it's just, we either allow it or we don't, and then we put this to bed. I mean, we've been messing around with this for a year. I think we either want to allow certain attention-getting devices or we don't, and then we have to move forward from there, and we have to deal with the ramifications of that accordingly. But Councilwoman Sarmiento.
So I said this in one of the meetings that we had. I was concerned of the overclutter or the sign trash, or was it clutter, the word that Jessica used. I agree with that. And then we went through presentations and hearing the statistics and every excuse in the world to not let this one business fly the tube man, right? I also agree with you because I said it. I don't want to have 1,500 fly thingies all down Highway 6. That picture you showed, I agree with that. And I also mentioned then, what if we put boundaries around that and stated maybe 1 or 2 or 3. I can't imagine the weeklies would put up 15 tube bands up, right? I don't know what the right way to mitigate that is. However, one of the statements that I did say in the past was, right now, historically, we don't have car lots. We have 1 dealership. We don't have car lots up and down Highway 6. Yes, small car lots are notorious for things like that. They are, and I don't like it. It's not beautiful. It's not. However, I'm also compelled to want to state the obvious that we do have the ability to allow it, but then like we said before, if it gets out of hand and we see stuff like that, it's easy to put it back on the agenda and start working on that, right? However, the other thing is I don't want we already hear all the complaints of enforcement, A, B, C, D going on. Do we really want them to go out and focus their time and efforts on checking sign ordinances? I mean, I'm struggling with that, guys.
Crystal, and I think that's the approach that when staff got from the meeting, it was suggested, look, if we allow them and things start getting out of hand, then we come back and we change the ordinance. And yes, we know the ones that were up, during this interim would be able to stay. We don't think that would be many, and we would be able to get ahead of it so that if the proliferation was starting, we would be able to step in. So, I mean, this didn't come just from an applicant. This came from a meeting with staff, and the mayor was there too. And I don't remember if you were there or not, but anyway, that was the dynamics of the meeting, and that's kind of how it ended up this way with it's not a static document that we're going to chisel and never dust off. This is a living document that can be changed at any time, and I think it's a little bit of a trial thing to see, and that we're able to come back at any time that we need to. And I think that was kind of our approach, just like what you were saying.
I can guarantee you something. Councilwoman Sarmiento will be the first to complain and try to put it on the agenda right along my colleague here, because I don't want to see the clutter. But I also think that we've overstepped. It's been overreach. We went way beyond, and now we're in this discussion because of it. It's too much. Do we want to consider a 2-limit attention-getting device, or do we want to approve it and move forward? And then if we see in 2 months there's trash everywhere, we bring that sucker back. I rest.
So we approve it and put it back on here in 2 weeks, and then take it off. That's a backward way of doing it, but you'd grandfather the one over there, and then we're through.
Larry's thinking like a lawyer. Way to go, Larry.
Well, I mean, that's an out. That's all I can tell you.
You act like you've been doing this for a few years, Larry.
Well, not really.
Is that the will of council? I'm just.
Any other comments from council? All right, do I have a motion to approve? I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Larry, what was your vote?
I voted for it.
Okay.
Put it on in 2 weeks.
All right, the motion passes 5-2. Thank you, everyone, and Councilman Opliger, thank you for bringing that off the consent agenda. I think that was a good discussion to have, so I appreciate that. We will now move officially on to agenda item number 2, which is consideration and possible action on a record vote setting the preliminary tax rate for 2023 and scheduling the public hearing on September 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at Manvel City Hall, 20031 Highway 6, Manvel, Texas. Dan?
Yes, Mayor and Council, so this is what we talked about during the workshop earlier. This is kind of what the purpose of the preliminary proposed budget was, to show you kind of at a glance of, what the implications are of all of the different supplemental requests, the existing requests, potential benefit increases, salaries, and all those kind of good things, new employee potential. So this evening, what we're looking for, what we need to have, I believe, Tammy, is tonight's our deadline, right? So this isn't something that we can kick down the road. We have to have you want to read the actual verbiage that we need tonight, Tammy?
So, Dan, I do have that, and
Okay,
what I'll do is whatever tax rate is the consensus of being set here, and just a point of clarification, while it states preliminary tax rate, it is not the tax rate that we necessarily will be going with. It is quite literally the cap. We can't go higher, we can go below, but Dan, I'll make the motion because I have the exact verbiage here. And then we are going to have a record vote. Yes, sir.
That's what you meant.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
sorry.
Am I missing anything, Tammy? Do you want to talk through very briefly the schedule?
Yes. So in your, I passed out this evening as well, the schedule. So today's the date that you would set your preliminary rate. We would send that to the county first thing tomorrow, and they would publish in the paper. Once that is done, then on September the 18th, that would be the date of the public hearing for the tax rate, as well as the setting the date for, or possibly adopting the tax rate. You will also have on your schedule in red, that's your budget items. The budget calendar kind of goes hand in hand with the tax rate. So you would have a budget hearing on September the 5th, that's a Tuesday because Monday's a holiday, with the adoption scheduled at the same date that your tax rate adoption date is. Should you not be able to adopt the tax rate by the 18th, there's a couple dates at the very bottom, the 22nd or the 25th. The suggestion would be to meet on the 22nd, and last case scenario, you have that final meeting on the 25th. If it's not adopted by then, you've lost your time frame based on the number of days from the date of the hearing and how many days we have to be able to adopt the rate from that date. And then it reflects back to the previous year. No new, I think it's a no new revenue rate, right?
Thank you for that overview, Tammy. And Dan, I apologize if I cut you off whenever you were, my apologies about that. So, and in council, I don't know if we need to necessarily have a special meeting between now and the next one on August 21st. But on the August 21st meeting, we'll be able to have a determination as to whether or not we might need to have a workshop or two as we continue to work through the budget. But it seems like a lot of the legwork we did in advance has set us up pretty well. So what I need to know from council before making this motion and then doing the roll call vote, as Councilman Acree said, is what tax rate do we want to set as the cap? Does anybody have a number here that they'd like to throw out initially for discussion?
I like to see if it can be, stay as it is at 57.
Council, any thoughts on that?
I'm good with the 56. And then,
Okay, so we have 157, 156.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, and I know we discussed this quite extensively, but at that 56 rate, we can budget for what we currently have, none of the new ask, the staffing, the equipment.
We can force those numbers to see what else we can fit in there. But yeah, for the most part, only that amount that I've already added, the 600 and some plus, that would work for the 56 cents. We can have maybe 1, 2 items, depending on which ones we go with in there.
Okay. Okay.
And Tammy, it looks like you were going to say something.
Just wanted to, of course, this is just, you cannot go over this rate, but if you did go with that 57 cents, you are over the voter approval rate, which you would run out, the clock is, you're going to run out of time. There's no way by being able to call the election and get your dates opted in that you could adopt that rate. Typically, the intent would be the budget numbers and everything are pretty much figured on this proposed rate. That kind of gives us an idea where to move forward. So just so that y'all know, if you do that 57 cents, that is higher than that.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilman Hudson, I know you proposed the 57. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my whole thing is just try to leave it as it is from last year. So last year was 56?
No, 57.
57, I like to see it, because we have the upcoming salaries for the police department, and that was my main thing, trying to get the salaries up with this current thing. It'd be nice to lower it, but it's not that much of a deal to me.
I'm sorry, Tammy, and I know my brain is thick on this. So you said that if we go over that 560708, which is voter approved, we would run out of time and then be forced to accept the no new revenue rate?
So, which is what I was trying to confirm when I had stepped out. So if you're going to go above the no new revenue rate, if it were, you could set this one at that, but if you were planning to adopt that rate, it affects the budget itself, where the budget would have had to have been filed by July the 22nd with the secretary. It's not been filed yet. Typically, most cities can compute these numbers long before the tax assessor has sent us the numbers, because they're not faced with the growth and all the new homes like we are. So in the past, we could kind of compute these numbers long before this date. Sadly, with all the growth and the new homes, we can't pre-compute the numbers. So typically, we would have started this process a while back if that were the intent, that you needed more revenues coming in than what the no new revenue rate is, if that makes any sense.
That does, Tammy. So basically, because there was not an earlier start on preparing the budget, which next year that will be addressed. We'll be starting a lot earlier. Because of that, we are not able to comply by the state-given timelines in order to adopt anything above the voter approval rate. So basically, we will have to adopt a tax rate of 0.560707 or less. So if council wants to give itself as much flexibility to go up or down, that's what we would set as a cap. You can't go any higher than that. So I think, Councilman Hudson, that accomplishes what you're looking for. You know, what's the max allowed, and then we can go under it. Yes, ma'am.
So basically, and forgive me because I'm new at this, basically our hands are tied. If we want to say yes to our police department and salary increases and all those things that we absolutely need to prepare for the growth that Councilman Perry said, because I listened while I left, and Councilman Opliger as well. So our hands are tied, so we can't really adopt it. And even if we put it into the election and the city of Manvel and the community said, yeah, I'll pay $192 a year so that our police and staff are taken care of, we can't do that anyway.
So keep in mind, even if you went with that 560708 or over, that still doesn't meet all of those requirements that are in the ask to begin with. Your hands were already tied long before that rate was set. You would have to have something on the ballot, and it would need to be quite extensively higher than what this rate is.
What would that rate be then?
Well,
Because my understanding was if we went with this rate, we could budget most of that in there to allocate for some of those hefty needs.
Yeah, so Councilwoman Sarmiento, so the tax rate that's been proposed in the budget is 56 cents, which if council decided to set the cap at 560707, that 56 cents, which is what the budget is based around, would increase taxes on the average resident from the no new revenue rate by $192. Based off of the current tax rate and values, the average resident will see about $150 tax payment increase. That tax rate allows us to fill everything as proposed within this budget. If we want to do anything at that point outside of this budget, we either need to reallocate funds, or we need to pull from the unused fund balance, or we need to bring in more businesses to bring in more sales tax to offset the tax increase. So the 56 cents would accomplish what's been proposed. Then we could pull from unused funds in order to possibly rearrange some other things based off of what council wants to accomplish with staff. But Dan.
If I could, Mayor, so if council wanted to do all of the things and all of the supplemental items, salary, raises, dependent coverage, all of those things, you'd be looking at a tax rate of about 65 cents, okay, at least, which would absolutely require voter approval, okay? Anything over the 560-708, we're just calling it 56 cents, just because it's easier, right, than all of those numbers. So with the 56 cents, what we're going to do is we're going to go back, and some of the things that we talked about at council tonight there might be a recommendation for some fund balance, but we're going to try and do as many of those things as we possibly can and come back to you with a proposed budget. So I want to be very clear. This is a preliminary. It's woefully preliminary. I mean, and I know that. Again, it doesn't have any of our narrative stuff yet. It's just to give you an idea so that you can make a more informed decision. Now, what I can tell you, if you go down to anything less than the 56, every cent that you go down is about $215,000, if that helps. So if you wanted to go down to 50 cents, then that's 1.3 million that we don't have to work with in the budget anymore.
Thank you for the clarification. Also, while I was driving there and coming back, I was trying to listen in. I heard something about reducing the homestead exemption or adding to it, raising that so that we could fill some of that. Can somebody just fill me in on that discussion?
I'll do my best. So what we can certainly explore if council wants to, and I know we might be asking Rosie to do a lot here, so Rosie, I'm not sure if you're a coffee drinker, but we there you go. But we could look at possibly increasing the homestead exemption. Right now, I think Manvel maybe has a 1% homestead on property owners. It's either 0% or 1%. But it's very, very minimal. In Texas, you can have up to 20% from a homestead standpoint. So the city of Alvin just passed it to increase it to 20%. The city of Pearland has it at 5%. What that does is that decreases the burden that your homesteaded properties have to pay from a tax standpoint, while still allowing you to maximize the revenue from other sources. But that is a very preliminary conversation. Whether or not we get it adopted within this budget or a future budget, something to explore.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so I think I have a good understanding now on the .56 rate. And I like the statement of we need to bring in more businesses and be business friendly to help mitigate those big gaps that we have there. So I think we need to start with that business advisory and move that baby forward so we can bring in healthy businesses here. Thank you so much.
So I think I understand the tax rate that council wants to utilize as the cap, so I'll make a motion for that. And just a point of clarification, I will be voting against this motion. I did it when I was previously on council because I want to see our tax payment decrease to the city. And because of that, I feel like you should set your cap at that amount to live within your means. But I look forward to working with council to see if there's a way that we can decrease this further. So what I'll do is I'll make a motion, we'll get a second, see if there's any other comments from council, and then we'll go through the record/roll call vote. So I make a motion to propose a tax rate for 2023 of 0.560707. Pause for dramatic effect. Make sure that's good. That's right under, correct? Okay. For $100 of value to be placed on a future agenda for adoption. A public hearing will be held on September 18th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at Manvel City Hall, 20031 Highway 6, Manvel, Texas. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'm going to call for a record vote. Mayor Dan Davis is a nay. City Council Member Place 1, Larry Akery.
Yes.
City Council Member Place 2, David Lands.
No.
City Council Member Place 3, Harry Opliger.
Yes.
City Council Member Place 4, Ed Perry.
Yay.
City Council Member Place 5, Crystal Sarmiento.
I want to sleep good at night. I'll say yay.
City Council Member Place 6, Jerome Hudson.
Yay.
Okay, motion passes 5-2. Thank you, everybody, for that. We'll continue with the budget discussion. We'll be holding a public hearing on the 18th of September, and then we'll continue moving forward with the budget. Now moving on to agenda item number 3, which is consideration and possible action to appoint Jose Abraham as the city's zoning official to administer and enforce the zoning regulations of the city, section 77-3 of the city code. Dan?
Yes, Mayor. So our zoning ordinance, section 77-3, literally under the definitions describes zoning official means the person appointed by council to administer and enforce the zoning regulations of the city. I believe currently that person is Jessica, and Joe's has stepped up in very many ways as our city planner, and so it makes sense to appoint him as the zoning official. So.
Thank you for that, Dan. And Joe's, what I'll add is what I've heard from the community is everybody speaks very highly of you. They say that you're very responsive, that you know your stuff, that you know some of the best places to eat around. And so, just kudos to you for the work that you've been putting in and serving our community.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that.
Does
I enjoy doing that.
Thank you. Does any council members have any grilling questions for Joe's? Okay. What I'll do is I'll make a motion to appoint Jose Abraham as the city's zoning official. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Good luck. Agenda item number 4, consideration and possible action to approve the Second Amendment to the Agreement of Employment by and between the City of Manvel and Robert Gervais. Dan, do you want me to introduce this or? Okay, so Bobby is one of 2 city employees that reports directly to City Council. One of the unique things about Bobby's employment with the city is that his performance review and any salary adjustments that might come with that is always done at the beginning of the calendar year. And quite frankly, that's a little unfair to Bobby because everyone else gets their performance reviews and any sort of salary increase done at the end of the fiscal year. So Bobby's sitting around, eating a gallon of sugar-free Bluebell ice cream, waiting for 3 months for a potential salary increase and performance review. So it works out well that if we choose to adopt this amendment, it would align any performance or salary increase, 1, with the budget, but 2, whenever we choose to hire a new city manager, aligning that with October 1st. That way any performance reviews and any salary adjustments are done in alignment with the budget calendar year rather than the actual calendar year. So this is something that Bobby brought forward the conversation. I know past council had considered it and was looking at doing it, but then we had some turnover with council, and we want to make sure to, Bobby does a lot of great things for us. He puts in a lot of work, even on his days off, he's working, and I think this is the right move and the right thing to do. Bobby, I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add.
I think that sums it up, and I think maybe some of the council members are here back in January when I had my eval. I asked Jason, former council member, Jason said that was brought up, and he told me afterwards I was supposed to make that part of my motion, but I forgot. But basically, it would misalign my cost of living adjustment to be with the rest of the city employees. And it also puts in there that I would receive the cost of living adjustment in the same amount given to the general bodies of employees. Or if different amounts are given to different sets of employees, it would be a weighted average. So if, for instance, PD got 4%, regular city employees got 3%, mine would be average. And it would basically make it also the timing where it could be budgeted. Because right now, if all the employees got an increase October 1, I would have to wait till February to know if I would get one, number one, and second, what would that amount be? And then how do you budget that far ahead too if you're in finance, because you don't know what that amount would be. So basically just aligns me with all the other city employees, that's all.
We're just trying to make Rosie's job easier, basically. Any questions or comments from council? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a
I'll
motion.
second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. We will move on to agenda item number 5, which is consideration and possible action to approve resolution 2023-R-19. Dan?
Oops. Yes, Mayor. So this is in response to the development permits that we talked about at our last regular meet. I believe it was the last meeting. Taking those development permit required fees from $500 in the floodplain and $100 outside of the floodplain down to $0 for both. Excuse me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Down to 0?
Yes, sir.
For a limit of loads of what?
Nope. No, sir. So the development permit and the development permit ordinance, they already describe what the load limits are in the floodplain. And it's based on how many acres that you have, and it's not loads, it's cubic yards.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we're not addressing any of that for this part. This is just the fee schedule, right? Just getting the fees down to where they need to be.
0, huh?
Yes, sir. So one of the comments might have been David, for the ones, if it's in the floodplain, but it's over the limit, we had talked about having a fee for those. Well, if it's over the limit of what is allowed by the development permit, then a drainage plan is required. Well, a drainage plan has its own fee structure anyway, so it's a non-issue. That'll get taken care of, so we're not double feeing essentially.
And Dan, just to ask, and Bobby, you might be able to speak to this. I understand it that there is, I think it's January 1st, 2024, a new state law goes into effect, or maybe it's the one on September 1st of this year that states that every 10 years a city is required to approve and update all of their fees. And by including within this resolution some of our total comprehensive fee schedule, that would in essence take care of that for us from a state law standpoint.
Correct. We re-adopted and all the other fees. We don't just change one fee, we adopt the whole schedule.
Okay,
So it's
perfect.
frequently refreshed.
Perfect. Yeah, I just read that from TML today, actually, so.
So if that's it, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Adrian will be here.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Councilman Acree, Councilman Opliger, thank you for bringing those forward. Agenda item number 6, consideration and possible direction to staff regarding Code of Ordinance, Section 33-51C, grease traps. Dan just spoke to this a little bit during his city manager update. This is an item that was brought forward to us by a resident, a business owner in the community, that there might need to be some better alignment with how we require grease traps, because across the board right now, regardless of what type of a food establishment you are, doesn't matter how much grease that you produce, you are required to have a 500-gallon grease trap. Ooh. Well, for some businesses, let's say, a marble slab creamery comes in. They're not going to really produce any grease. So from a food establishment standpoint, they shouldn't necessarily be held to that based off of their classification as a food establishment. So we're looking at it, we're working on it, reaching out to the business community and seeing what needs to be done there. I covered that well?
Yes, sir. Yeah, right now we're just kind of working on the mechanics of what does that look like, to where we don't violate, any other codes. We're just digging in there to see if it's a local amendment maybe to one of the international codes. So we're just doing our research right now. I think we understand the intent. We can't get away from grease traps. They're important, obviously. Ray and Robbie would kill us if we got rid of grease traps altogether, because what happens is that grease goes down into our sanitary sewer and just messes up the wastewater treatment plant, of course. So we're just trying to figure out if there's some maybe different levels, maybe different, there are such a thing as an under the sink grease trap. We've heard some things that those aren't necessarily advisable because they clog up easily. So, we're doing our research, but I just wanted to rest assured we are working on that.
I appreciate that, Dan. And just so y'all know, as council, my philosophy is if there's something of importance that we're working on, I want to put it on the agenda. That way we have an opportunity to discuss it as a body, make sure that it's on all of our radars, no necessarily wheeled-in and deal-in, but let's have a discussion, make sure we're on the same page before we take any significant steps forward. So regarding agenda item number 6, any questions or comments from council? Councilwoman.
I'm not a food expert by any means, so please forgive me in advance if this question is silly. Is there a way to have the businesses possibly have a permit when in the type of permit for the type of food establishment to say, we don't actually cook here, for instance, a smoothie place or something like that, to avoid all of this, where they don't have to have a grease. Number one, that's an expense, and, not everybody's going to use it, so.
Yes, and so for the most part, this is for sort of retrofitting the establishments that were here before, right? Before we had active fire marshals and code enforcement and health officials. Some of these, quite frankly, have been out there for a while. So a lot of this is just bringing things up current, okay? Most of the new businesses, if it's a new, especially a chain restaurant, they just know that's just part of development. So yes, we'll get that information from them, but there's still, annual inspections. So you go out and, hey, we used to not have a deep fryer, but we've added one. Okay, well now you need a grease trap or whatever the thing is. So it's not just one and done, because I suspect, it would just be a shell whenever it started and there would be nothing at all in there. Oh, everything's fine. So we have to do those annual, right, Joe? Annual inspections on those.
And then Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if you have an under the sink grease trap or any grease trap, you have to quarterly get it cleaned and you have to provide a report to the city, correct?
Right. Right now, our code literally says that under the sink grease traps are prohibited. That's what it says right now.
They previously were allowed, so there's a few that are grandfathered in.
Right.
Yeah. But there is a quarterly submittal of, hey, we got it cleaned, we're good, et cetera.
So I'd have to do a little more research in regards to that, and I can bring that back at the next council meeting, related to the frequency that they're going to be required to be cleaned by a certified professional, similar to what the cooking hoods are. So related to that, are you asking specifically for the under the sink and what's those are required for their periodic inspecting, testing, and maintenance?
Just in general, because we're educating a future food expert
The
here.
quarterly usually is the best bet based upon best practices and the frequency. And it also depends on how much they are producing.
Okay.
Just
you,
like
sir.
with the commercial cooking hoods. Those could be anywhere from 1 week up to annually.
Yes, sir.
But my question is more for those establishments that do not cook or deep fry or need a grease trap. So for instance, Elevate Nutrition, I used to frequent there a lot when my schedule allowed it. That type of establishment, to my understanding, they don't serve that type of food to require a grease trap. Or maybe they do now, I don't know. So that was my question is there a way to allow those type of businesses when they file for occupancy or their permit to state yes or no? And then when we have our inspections, if we catch them, then there's a hefty fine for not coming forth first and applying for that.
So right now, a food establishment is a food establishment, period. It doesn't matter what it is. So therein lies the rub, the marble slab example. And obviously Elevate Nutrition is kind of what sparked this, quite frankly. So you got your finger on the pulse there for sure. Yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely. And I just looked at the ordinance. It is every 4 months that it's required. Yep. For the inspection.
So what we have here is to approve it?
No, ma'am. It is just to start the conversation to let council know that staff is working on things, that they'll be meeting with the business community as well, and at a future date, we'll most likely have a change to this ordinance come before us.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no, great questions. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is consideration and possible action to direct staff regarding the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 35, Article X, Mobile and Temporary Food Vendors, Section 35-317, Basic Requirements. Same thing, Dan alluded to this during his city manager update. We wanted just to have this on the agenda for discussion in case council has questions. But prior to the election, council did look at potentially making changes, but those were stalled. And there's now an opportunity for us to revisit these again, understanding that the city would like to have events to hold food trucks out and not have to necessarily go to somewhere, outside of the city to do events, as well as there's a way to protect our local restaurants while also becoming more friendly towards food trucks, which would benefit our entire community. So as Dan mentioned, that the staff is working on this. As I understand it, they're going to look to reach out to some local food establishments, look to reach out to some mobile food vendor operators, just to see what we can work on and take a collaborative approach to really take advantage of this opportunity. Dan?
Yes, sir. And a great example is, we tried to have an initiative where food trucks could be at City Hall on council meeting nights. So, what a great way to sort of advertise and buy local. And in order to do that, we would be in violation of our own ordinance right now. So, because there are some distance requirements. We've got, restaurants within X number of feet, or X number of yards. And so we just want to, again, we're trying to research that without doing that in a vacuum. So we'll be talking to some of the local businesses and seeing what works for them. You wouldn't want a hamburger food truck pulling up into a place that sells hamburgers, or at least not without them talking about it first. If they got prior permission, then maybe things are okay. But we've got a little bit of work to do on that one.
Opportunities for improvements.
Opportunities, yes, sir.
Opportunities. Any initial comments or questions from council regarding that? So I believe this is an item, Dan, that we'll see at a future agenda as well. Thank you, sir. Agenda item number 8, update on the citizen survey results by PIO Brooke Cyphers. Brooke, time to rumble.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for providing me the opportunity to give you this update. As you already know, our citizen survey, it closed on July 28th, and since then we were just collecting and inputting any hard copy versions of the survey that we received. For example, we had 650 applications that were submitted online, or 615 applications that were submitted online, 96 returned with our utility bills. We sent those out to those residents that still get the physical ones, and we had a decent response back. I think we have approximately 700 residents that get their utility bills mailed to them. And then we had 10 individuals that came in to take their survey at City Hall, and then 7 that took them at the Manvel Public Library. That made for a total of 728 responses. In the packets, I think I handed out to everybody. I went ahead and highlighted which answer choices, as I go through all of the questions, had the highest percent response rate. So I will just dive right in if y'all don't mind. So for the first question, it's simple. Where do you live? Vast majority of people said Manvel, as we were hoping, 94.23%. We also had number 2 was Rose Sharon at 2.06%, and number 3 at Iowa Colony at 1.79%. And that is in part because there is some overlap between the postal service that happens in Iowa Colony and then Rose Sharon as well. So those individuals have addresses that may vary, but they are typically within the city limits. So moving on to question 2, that was just about zip codes. I could give you all 728 responses. There were only a couple outliers that weren't the 77586 or 775, whatever. 78, yes. So moving on to question number 3, it was just what is your age? We had, the number 1 answer was 35 through 44. That was at 22.8%. And then the second highest was 65 or older at 22.25%. And those are really close. It was only about 4 answers difference between 1 and 2. The third one was 45 through 54, which was 21.70%. Overall, we had a really good spread of individuals that reported. We even had 2 people that listed themselves as under 17 that took the survey, which I thought was really interesting and proactive of them. Some notes on that one. Senior citizen is generally considered in the U.S. to be around 62. So with respondents to our survey, about 58% of them are 17 through, under 17 through 54. And then over that 55 plus range is approximately 42%. Okay. Question 4 was an identification of what zone you live in. An overwhelming majority of population dense area was zone 2, and they came in with 35.85% of responses. Zone 1 was number 2 at 17.03, and zone 4 was at 13.05%. Okay. And then moving on to question 5. From here, you're going to start to notice the percentages are not going to add up to 100, and that is because we have individuals selecting multiple choices on these. So if those numbers don't add up, that's why there were people submitting multiple. So the first one is going to, on this one, was look over proposed city facilities below, which two are most important to you. And the number one answer was city parks and open spaces at 63.46%. The second one was the Manvel Public Library at 33.93%. And then a fitness complex was number 3 at 22.94%. I think those kind of speak for themselves. Okay, moving on to question number 6. Look over the city qualities or benefits and which are most important to you. This was, again, another select 2. City benefits are not things that, are things that the city encourages or maintains or supports, but does not specifically offer as a service. And so number 1, and this one was really, really close, was restaurants and retail at 40.25%. And number 2 was quality schools at 39.84%. And that was about 3 difference between 1 and 2, which I thought was really interesting. Number 3 was bike and pedestrian trails, which was 23.21%. And then really close to that, I just felt I should add number 4, which was city green spaces, because there was about 8 vote difference, and that one is at 22.12%. Moving on to question 7, look over the development/growth issues below, which are most important to you. So number 1 on this one was ensure maintenance of public infrastructure, streets, drainage, etc. That came in at a whopping 68.41%. Number 2 was minimize traffic congestion, and that was 46.54%. And number 3 was attract new retail or restaurant business, which was 24.59%.
And Brooke, one of the things that I noticed from a trend standpoint I thought was interesting is the last question was which qualities or benefits are most important to you, and number 1 was restaurants and retail. But yet, in regards to this one, question 7, restaurants and retail is on the lower side of the votes.
Yeah, so we did actually split those up. It was attract new retail business and attract new restaurant business. And the retail business didn't land as well as the new restaurant businesses, which came in at number 3 with the 24.59%. So it is interesting to see priorities. Do we want to eat more or do we want to shop more?
and people, they want to eat and shop, but
Yes.
they can't do that if they have bad roads. So that's the reason why that came out there. But I liked that, seeing that correlation there.
Yes, for sure. Question number 8 was look over the safety and security issues below, which two are most important to you. Number 1 came in as city preparedness / response to emergencies, which came in at 55.08%. Number 2, very close, was vehicle and pedestrian traffic safety at 53.43%, and that was about a 12-vote difference between 1 and 2. And then number 3 was community policing, COPS program, Coffee with the Cops, Teen CPA. That was 20.74%. So moving on to number 9, look over the operational issues below, and again, select 2 which are most important to you. Number 1 came in at 66.0%, and that was maintain and repair streets. Number 2 was maintain water and sewer, which was 38%. And then number 3 was designate walking and biking trails, which was 19.92%. Very close. Again, I wanted to just mention number 4 was enhance community appearance, because that was a 1-vote difference between that number 3 and number 4, and that was 19.78%.
What I'll just say is based off of that question, I think Robbie and his team are going to be pretty busy based off of those 2 answers.
And then moving on to question 10 of the events and programs listed below, which ones interest you and your family? This one was a select all that apply, so we did get a very big range, and people really do like events. So number one was actually farmers market, which came in at 70.88%, which is really a lot. And then number two was seasonal events, including tree lighting, Christmas lights, parades. That was 53.43%. And then number three was concerts and movie in the park, which was 39.42%.
And Bobby and Dan, a question for you guys. For some different events and things like that we might want to do moving forward, we could certainly utilize the hot tax, the hotel occupancy tax, in order to accomplish some of those goals, correct?
Yeah, there's certain rules you have to follow, but it's designed to get people from outside the city to come visit. So if it's obviously open to the public and it's an event designed to get people in from the region, you definitely could, yeah.
Thank you, Bobby.
Moving on to question 11, it was a little bit different. This one is based on your previous answers. Which issues are most important to for the city to provide? Evaluate from highest to lowest. So instead of a select two checkbox system, we went from what is most important for us to provide versus in your opinion. So this way, on this one, I'm going to list them all out from first to fifth, and that is safety and security came in first at 43.27%. City quality / benefits came in number two at 25.27%. City facilities came in number three at 23.76%. Operational came in at number four with 20.33%. Events and programs came in at number six with 54.67%. Now that sounds like a big number. That was of where it was listed within its, where it was listed in relation to everybody placing it at number six. So what I also found really interesting on this one is the for safety and security, it came in both at its highest between place one and place two. City qualities and benefits came in on its highest between place two and place three. City facilities came in at its highest between 3 and 4. And then operational came in at its highest between places 4 and 5. And then we had development / growth. It came in at its highest in the number 2 spot, but was still beat out by city qualities and benefits. But then again, it came in in the number 5 spot as where people placed it the most frequent. And then events and programs, similar to the other ones, it came in at 5 and 6 most frequently. So moving on to question 12. From the same list of your most important issues, which 3 are most important to you? This is taking from that last question, and I did get somebody asking me why did we ask this question? It seems a bit redundant. And the reason that we went this route, or the reason that I thought that this route would be helpful, was first of all, because if we just have people select checkboxes, it's not going to be we're not going to get a priority list. And then we also wanted to see how closely the alignments are between what individuals believe the city is most important to provide versus what they personally would like to see. So on number 12, we have number 1 was safety and security, which came in at about a 30% jump from where it was placed in the previous question. And then we had city quality / benefits came in at 55.49%, which was approximately a 28% jump. And then development / growth came in at number 3, which was actually a jump from 5th place to 3rd place between these last 2 questions, which I just found was interesting. We're moving into kind of the end of the questionnaires, wrapping it up. This one was question 13. If the desired projects exceed what the city of Manvel is able to fund, would you be comfortable with city council approving a tax rate increase to establish these projects? The overwhelming answer was no, with 78.85%, and yes only got 21.15%. Yes. Then the gender spread, we had a pretty good gender spread. I would say we had, the number one was female, that came in at 58.93%, and then male came in 40.8%. So pretty even for the most part there. How long have you lived in the city of Manvel? The number one answer was 1 to 4 years at 31.46%. The number two answer was 5 to 9 years, which was 27.6%. And then the number three answer was 20 years at 19.78%. So that kind of equates to under 10 years was approximately 64% of respondents, and then over 10 years was approximately 36% respondents. Moving on to question 16, tell us about the children in your household. The number one answer was no children in household. That came in at 54.12%. Number two answer was children between 0 and 12 living in households at 25%. And number three was children age 18 to 25 living in household at 10.9%. And you might think that that's a little bit strange coming off of, I think it was question number two, where the number two answer was quality schools is most important amenity that's provided, and at 40%. But I mean, if you average them out here, the no children in household is 54%, but cumulatively between the children's age 0 through 25, we have about 46% that answered. And then number 17, describe your residence. Overwhelmingly, the number one answer was owner buying a home, which was 95.8%. We had renter lease at 3.02%. And then other was 1.1%. And other was commonly, from what I saw, listed as just living at home with parents. And then question number 18, to ensure proper ethnic representation, which option best describes your ethnic background? The number one was white at 57.28%. Number two was black or African American at 15.38%. And number three was Hispanic or Latino at 14.97%. If you want to kind of average those all out, cumulatively 43% of respondents were non-white. And then the last one was a comment section, which we had 348 people answer, and that was provided in a more detailed response or a more detailed survey packet on I think it was last Wednesday, and I wasn't going to read them all since there was a lot. But that is the overview. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Brooke, and I appreciate your efforts here and compiling this data and presenting it. I read through each of the written responses, and they were very interesting responses, very, very insightful responses. So, Brooke and Dan, kind of two things. One, how can we start to share these results with the community? And then what do we deem as the next steps? I think it's great to collect the answers, but we need to take action. We need to make these answers actionable. So what do we see as being the next steps here?
Well, I would be more than happy to get these up on the website by tomorrow's, and we'll provide that as a link on all of our social media channels so people can check out the responses themselves and do a little bit more of a deep dive. As far as next steps, that would be up to council. Whatever y'all can infer from these answers, I'm sure staff is more than happy to go ahead and implement.
So here's a suggestion. We get on with that drainage program over there and get that finished up recreation area. That was the highest one.
Get Acre Lake going.
Well,
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could just ask, this was kind of our first questionnaire that was done in this manner. So this was sort of a little test pilot study, so to speak, to see, what are some of the ways that we can get community engagement, right? So the process in general, I mean, we think it's a success with 600 or 700 people responding.
Yes, I would definitely say it was a success, especially in a forum that is not very one-on-one and not very engaging. This was us sending out and asking residents to go somewhere, go somewhere on their own and complete something on their own accord. And so it was a very, very impressive response for that type of outreach.
And I think the the quickness, I guess, how we got the responses. So this isn't the be-all, end-all way to get information from our citizens, of course, but I think it's one of the ways. And, we just sort of file that one away, that if there is something that we need in a short turnaround to get, the pulse, this is a pretty neat way. I mean, within we started getting responses almost immediately. So if we put a short window on it, here it is, get the answers quick. So I think it's just another good tool to have in the belt of trying to, again, check the pulse of what our citizens want. So.
Yeah, I would agree, Dan. And what I would say for council, if we just take some time to think about this, not only how this feeds into the budget, but also future decisions that we make. It's, as Councilman Perry mentioned earlier, the word a social experiment, because we were wondering if we move forward with that 20, 30-year vision project and a comprehensive plan, are we going to have the community involvement that would justify the cost? And I think this shows that the community wants to be involved and they want to be heard. But Councilman Perry and Councilwoman Sarmiento, this was kind of started because you two brought this forward, and I appreciate that. Do you guys have any comments that you'd like to make?
Well, I started doing this when I campaigned because, trust me, it wasn't, and I've said this multiple times, running for office was not on any of my 1-year, 5-year, 10-year goals in life, anyhow. I think that because of taking the initiative to hear back from the community, I think is one of the biggest things of repairing the relationship with the community from City Hall and showing that we do care. And I know that council was all on board when we brought that idea up. And so I wanted to thank everybody and then thank you for actually seeing it through. And here it is today. We've got the actual results. I'm thrilled that the 68% went towards parks and recreation. I'm a little shocked that over 50% of those homes don't have any children in them. That's actually quite shocking to me. But however, I do make the note that just because you don't have children, that doesn't mean you don't care about the quality of schools in the area you live in, because that is a direct reflection of the type of community that you breed and what we have here. And so I was really impressed by that feedback from the community. So that's all I want to say. Now I want to see us put this to action, just like Mayor Dan Davis said. So thank you so much for taking it and running with it.
It's why we got to do Acre Lake. We got to take action there. And Councilman.
Yes, thank you, Brooke, for the survey, the information. And I think this is just a great step toward the community engagement that we're seeking. I think that's going to be important, with the monies that are being spent, the development that is taking place, the late nights for staff or what have you to get the city to where we believe the citizens want it to be. Community engagement is going to be important. So we want to do more things to get them involved. And one day we'll have a place to get them together, on a regular basis. And I think that City on the Rise moniker will have a lot more value in that sense. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Any other comments regarding agenda item number 8? No. Okay. We will move to mayor and council comments. Just two on my end. I want to just wish the best for all of our teachers and students who start school this week. It's in a very exciting time, a very nerve-wracking time. You will be in our thoughts and be in our prayers, and we're looking forward to seeing what you accomplish this year. And then, as I do at the beginning of every month, just want to celebrate our work anniversaries that we have this year for some of our city employees. So we have Caden Truitt that's celebrating an anniversary, and I don't want to mispronunciate this name. How do you say the name for our associate planner?
Ellie Rubosh.
Ellie Rubosh. So Ellie, congratulations on a work anniversary. We have Matthew Kulhanek. We also have Brianna Bob, Austin Livingston, and Rochelle Carr Lacey. So appreciate their service to our community and for being with us another year. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed, motion passes unanimously, 7-0. Good night.